Mr. Moretti, you need to come to Mercy General Hospital right now. The nurse's voice cracked on the word right now. We have a child in critical care, and you are listed as the father. The line went silent for 4 full seconds. When Adrian Moretti spoke again, his voice was so controlled it sounded like something carved from stone. I don't have a child. Sir, the nurse said carefully. The birth certificate says otherwise. Another silence, longer than the first. What is the child's name? Noah. Noah Bennett Moretti. He is 8 months old. Adrian Moretti hung up the phone. He stood completely still in the middle of his office on the 43rd floor, looking out at the rain falling over Chicago. 8 months old. Sophia, if this story already has, you drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because what happens next will change everything you think you know about this man. The rain had been falling over Chicago for 6 hours straight when Adrian Moretti's phone rang at 11:53 at night. He was still at his desk. That was not unusual. Adrian Moretti did not keep normal hours. He kept necessary hours. And on a Tuesday night in November, with 3 contract negotiations pending and a shipment dispute requiring his personal attention, necessary hours meant midnight. His assistant Marco had already gone home. The floor was quiet. The only sounds were the rain against the glass, the low hum of the ventilation system, and the faint sound of jazz from the speakers. Adrian kept at a volume low enough not to disturb his thinking. When the hospital number came up on his private line, he almost didn't answer. Almost. Something made him pick up. He would spend years afterward trying to understand what that something was. Instinct, maybe. Or the particular way a father's body knows things his mind has not yet been told. He didn't know that yet. He only knew that his thumb moved across the screen before he made a conscious decision to move it. Moretti. Mr. Moretti. A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. With something underneath the professionalism that sounded like she was bracing herself. My name is Jennifer Reyes. I'm calling from the emergency department at Mercy General Hospital. I apologize for the hour. Say what you're calling to say. A brief pause. We have a child here. He was brought in approximately 2 hours ago. His name is Noah Bennett Moretti. He is 8 months old, and he is currently in critical care with a serious cardiac episode. Another pause. Shorter. You are listed on his birth certificate as the father. Adrian did not speak. He heard every word. He understood every word. The English language had not failed him. But somewhere between his ears and his brain, the information seemed to encounter a wall, and for 4 full seconds it could not get through. Mr. Moretti. I don't have a child. It came out automatic. Not a lie. A statement of the reality he had lived inside for the past 16 months. Sir, Jennifer Reyes said very quietly. The birth certificate says otherwise. It was filed 8 months ago in Cook County. Noah Bennett Moretti. Mother listed as Sophia Bennett. Father listed as Adrian Moretti. Sophia. Her name in that sentence hit him somewhere so deep he actually leaned forward slightly, his hand pressing flat against the desk. Sophia. Is the mother there? He said. Yes. She's here. She's with the child right now. She asked us not to contact you. Jennifer Reyes hesitated. But I am the attending physician on duty tonight, and I needed to speak with you directly. There are medical factors that require your family history. This is not optional, Mr. Moretti. This is a child's life. Adrian was already standing. He was already reaching for his jacket. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He called Marco before he reached the elevator. Marco answered on the second ring because Marco always answered on the second ring. That was the reason Adrian had hired him 8 years ago and the reason he had kept him. I need a car. Now. Mercy General. I'll have it downstairs in 3 minutes. I also need you to run a name. Sophia Bennett. Everything current. Address, employer, vehicle registration. Everything you have since January of last year. I want it before I walk into that hospital. Marco's voice was steady. Do you want me to come with you? No. He stepped into the elevator and watched the doors close. He looked at his reflection in the polished steel. 40 years old. Gray at the temples. A face that had learned to show nothing, because showing nothing had saved him too many times to count. But looking at that face now, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. He saw a man who did not know what was happening to him. And Adrian Moretti never allowed himself not to know what was happening. The car was already running when he reached the lobby. Daniel, his driver, had the rear door open without a word. Adrian got in. The city moved past the windows, wet streets headlights the orange-stained darkness of a Chicago November night. His phone buzzed. Marco. The information came through in a clean, organized file the way Marco always delivered things. Adrian read it as the car moved through traffic. Sophia Bennett, 27 years old, currently residing at an apartment address on the north side. Employed as a legal assistant at a small family law firm called Hartley & Associates on the 4th floor of a building 3 miles from Mercy General Hospital. Vehicle registration, a used Honda registered 14 months ago. Clean record. No major debts, no criminal history. She had been 3 miles from him this entire time. 3 miles. He had spent the first 6 months after their divorce believing she had left Chicago entirely. He had not tried to find her. That had been deliberate. He had decided in the particular way he made all his difficult decisions that if she chose to leave, he would not follow. He had given her that. He thought it was the right thing. Now he understood he had been wrong about almost everything he thought he knew. The car stopped in front of Mercy General. Adrian was already out of the door before Daniel could come around to open it. The emergency entrance, the fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and recycled air. He walked through the automatic doors and went directly to the desk, and the 2 people staffing it looked up and immediately knew who he was. Everyone always knew who he was. Mr. Moretti. A young man stood up. Dr. Reyes asked me to bring you through directly, if you'll follow me. Wait. The young man stopped. Adrian didn't move. He stood in the middle of the emergency entrance with rain drying on his jacket and said very evenly, Before I go anywhere, I want to know the child's condition, right now, not when I'm standing in front of people. Tell me here. The young man, his badge said. Tyler looked at him with the particular expression of someone deciding whether or not to be afraid. He decided to answer. Noah is stable right now. He was brought in with a severe arrhythmia, irregular heartbeat. It was serious when he came in. He's been stabilized, but he's still in the cardiac monitoring unit. Dr. Reyes wants to speak with you because of some findings in his preliminary blood work. What findings? I really think Dr. Reyes should explain. Tyler. Adrian said the name with total calm. I am going to walk with you right now wherever you take me, and I am going to speak with Dr. Reyes, and I am going to do all of that. But I am asking you a direct question, and I would like a direct answer before we walk. Tyler swallowed. The findings suggest a genetic cardiac condition, something that runs in families. Dr. Reyes needs your medical history. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Take me there. The pediatric cardiac monitoring unit was at the end of a corridor that felt too long lit, too brightly. Adrian walked it without rushing because he had learned a long time ago that the way a man moved through difficult moments told everyone around him everything they needed to know. He walked like a man in control. He did not feel like a man in control. Dr. Olivia Carter met him at the door. A woman in her mid-40s, composed with reading glasses pushed up on her head and a file folder in her hand. She extended the other hand to shake his. Mr. Moretti, I'm Dr. Olivia Carter, the attending cardiologist. Thank you for coming. Jennifer Reyes called me. That was my decision. Jennifer is my resident. I asked her to make the call. Dr. Carter held the folder, but didn't open it yet. Before I take you in, I need you to understand that there are 2 things happening here. One is medical. One is not. I can speak to the medical part. The other part is going to be between you and Ms. Bennett. "Is the child my son?" He had not planned to ask it that way. He had planned to be more careful, more structured, more systematic. But standing in front of that door, with the knowledge that somewhere behind it, a baby was connected to monitors and wearing a hospital gown, the careful structure left him. Dr. Carter looked at him directly. "I cannot speak to paternity from a medical standpoint without formal testing, but the birth certificate names you, and the genetic markers we are seeing in Noah's blood work are consistent with a condition called long QT syndrome, which has a strong hereditary component." She paused. "Mr. Moretti, is there a history of sudden cardiac events in your family?" Adrian was quiet. His father, dead at 51, collapsed in the middle of a conversation with no warning. His uncle, his father's younger brother, who had survived something similar at 47 and carried a pacemaker ever since. His grandfather, who died before Adrian was old enough to remember him, a man the family described as having gone quickly. "Yes," Adrian said, "there is." Dr. Carter nodded once slowly, as if something she had suspected was now confirmed. "Then I need to speak with you at length about that history. And then—" She glanced toward the door. "There is a mother inside who came here tonight, thinking she was going to face this alone." Adrian looked at the door. "Take me to my son," he said. He had imagined this moment wrong. He understood that the second he stepped inside. He had imagined something dramatic, some version of himself entering like the man he was in every other room. He had imagined feeling anger, or betrayal, or the particular cold clarity that came to him in moments of crisis, the thing that made him useful in situations that destroyed other men. Instead, he walked through the door and he saw a baby lying in a hospital crib connected to monitors with a small yellow blanket tucked around his legs. And the baby looked at him, dark eyes, calm and strange and completely unafraid. Adrian stopped walking. He didn't know how long he stood there. Long enough that Dr. Carter quietly stepped out of the room. Long enough that the monitors kept beeping in their steady rhythm and the air conditioner hummed, and somewhere nearby a door opened and closed. Those eyes. He had seen those eyes in photographs. Old ones, black and white ones his grandmother kept in a shoebox she pulled out every Christmas. His father as a baby, his uncle, his grandfather. The same eyes, the same particular darkness, the same look of absolute uncomplicated presence, as if the world was exactly where it was supposed to be, and there was no reason to be surprised by any of it. Adrian pulled a chair to the side of the crib and sat down. He did not touch the baby yet. He didn't trust his hands. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, and looked at this person who had existed in the world for 8 months without him knowing. "You look like my father," he said quietly. The baby blinked. He would have liked that. The door opened behind him. He knew without turning around. He knew the particular sound of the way Sophia Bennett moved light steps barely audible, the habit of someone who had spent their whole life trying not to take up too much space. He had spent 2 years learning to recognize that sound and hating that she had learned it in the first place. He turned. She looked the same. That was his first thought. 27 years old, and she looked almost exactly the same. The same dark hair, the same angular face, the same eyes that always looked like they were processing 3 things at once. She was wearing a gray sweater and jeans, and she looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red at the edges, but she wasn't crying now. She had stopped crying before she came through that door. He knew her well enough to know that. She stopped in the middle of the room. They looked at each other across a crib holding a baby who looked like both of them. "Adrian," she said, just his name, just that one word, the way someone says a word when they've been rehearsing for it for a long time, and now that the moment is here, nothing they prepared sounds right. "Sophia," he said. She glanced at Noah, then back at him. "Is he did the doctor? She told me about the genetic condition." Adrian's voice was careful, controlled. the way it always was when he was working against himself. I gave her my family history. She said it helps narrow the treatment options. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, opened them. I didn't know about the condition, she said. I didn't know. When I first found out he was having when the cardiologist at his regular pediatrician flagged the... She stopped, started again. I found out 3 weeks ago that something might be wrong. They wanted to run more tests. I was trying to get more information before... Before what? She didn't answer. Before you told me, Adrian said. It came out quieter than he intended. Sophia pressed her lips together. Adrian, you were going to tell me, he said. It was not quite a question. At some point you were going to tell me he existed. She looked at him steadily. I was going to tell you when I knew he was safe. He is my son. I know. He is 8 months old. I know that too. And you were going to tell me when you decided I was ready to know. Sophia's voice went quiet. Not weak, just quiet. That's not... Then tell me what it is, Adrian said, because from where I'm sitting that's exactly what it looks like. Here, Sophia had rehearsed this conversation. She had rehearsed it in the shower in the car, in the space between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., when Noah wouldn't settle, and she was standing in the kitchen in the dark. She had rehearsed every version of it, the version where Adrian was cold, the version where he was furious, the version where he said nothing at all and the silence was worse than anything. She had not rehearsed the version where he sat next to her son's hospital crib looking at Noah like the ground had fallen away beneath him. She had not rehearsed the version where he looked broken. She sat down in the other chair on the opposite side of the crib because she needed something between them. When I found out I was pregnant, she said, we had already signed the papers. Adrian said nothing. I found out 3 weeks after, and I sat with it for a long time, Adrian. I'm not telling you this was easy. I'm not telling you I felt fine about it. I sat with it for 2 months, trying to figure out what the right thing was. The right thing was to tell me. The right thing, Sophia said carefully, was more complicated than that, and you know it. He looked at her. You had 2 men shot the month before I left, she said, not as an accusation, as a fact. I know it was business. I know your world has a logic I was never fully part of, but I was sitting in that apartment watching the news, and our divorce papers were on the table, and I was 2 months pregnant, and I was trying to imagine bringing a child into that. I would have protected him. I know you would have. Then what? That's what I was afraid of. Her voice was steady. It cost her something to keep it that way. Adrian, you protected me for 2 years. I know how you protect people. You surround them. You control every variable. You take away every risk, and you also take away every choice. She looked at Noah. I didn't want that for him. I didn't want him to grow up in a house full of guards, not knowing whether the men around him were there because his father loved him or because his father needed to own everything within reach. The room was quiet, except for the monitors. Adrian's jaw was tight. That is not who I am. It's who you were, Sophia said. I don't know who you are now. He looked at her for a long moment. You could have told me, he said. You could have come to me and told me, and we could have made decisions together. You don't make decisions together, she said, not unkindly, just honestly. You make decisions, and you present them. There's a difference. The muscle at the corner of his jaw moved. She knew that movement. She had spent 2 years watching it. It meant he wanted to argue and couldn't, because somewhere underneath the argument, he knew she wasn't wrong. His name, Adrian said after a moment. She looked up. Noah Bennett Moretti, he said. You gave him my name. Sophia was quiet for a beat. I was never trying to erase you, she said. I was trying to keep him safe. Those aren't the same thing. Dr. Carter came back 40 minutes later. She brought a second cardiologist with her, a younger man named Dr. Singh, and together they walked through Noah's initial test results, the preliminary assessment of the long QT diagnosis, and the treatment plan they were beginning to construct. Adrian asked questions, specific, intelligent, focused questions that surprised both doctors slightly. Sophia watched him process information the way she remembered quickly, thoroughly filing things in a mental structure she could almost see him building. He had always been like that. Even about things he didn't understand, he could orient himself inside 15 minutes. "What is the long-term outlook?" Adrian asked. "If this is what we think it is," Dr. Carter said, "it's manageable. Long QT syndrome is serious, but with proper monitoring medication, and in some cases, a small implanted device, people live completely normal lives. The key right now is to properly confirm the diagnosis and understand exactly which variant he has. That depends on the family history," Dr. Singh added, "which is why your information is so valuable. If we can trace the genetic line, we can narrow down the variant much faster." Adrian nodded. "Whatever you need from me. Tests, history, whatever." Dr. Carter said, "We'll start that process tomorrow morning." After the doctors left, Sophia sat back down. She was tired. She had been tired for 8 months in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. The kind of tired that came from carrying something too heavy for too long without anyone to share the weight with. She looked at Noah, who had fallen asleep again, his small chest rising and falling steadily. "He looks like your father," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her sharply. "I never met your father," he said, "but I saw the photographs you kept in your office, from when he was young." She glanced up. "The eyes are the same." Adrian was quiet. "My father died of a sudden cardiac event," he said. "He was 51 years old. We never had a name for what happened. We were told it was his heart, and that it had always been weak, and that was the end of the explanation." Sophia looked at Noah. "And now your son has his eyes," she said. Something shifted in Adrian's face. Not much. Adrian Moretti had spent his entire adult life learning to show nothing. But Sophia had spent 2 years learning to see the spaces between what he showed. "Yes," he said. "I'm sorry," she said, "for what it brought back." He looked at her. That surprised him. She could tell. "Don't apologize for that," he said. "I mean it." "Sophia." His voice dropped, went quieter. "Whatever we are right now, and I don't know what we are, you do not have to apologize for that." She looked at her hands. "I'm not apologizing for leaving," she said. "I need you to understand that. I'm not apologizing for the decision I made. I still believe I was trying to do the right thing. I know. But I am sorry that he got sick before you had the chance to know him." The silence between them changed. Not warm exactly, but something different than the hard silence from before. Something with space in it. "Tell me something about him," Adrian said. She looked up. "What?" "Tell me something about him. Something real. Something I don't know." He paused. "I know nothing, Sophia. I know his name is Noah, and he is 8 months old, and his eyes look like my father's. That's everything I know about my son. Tell me something real." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He laughs in his sleep." Adrian waited. "I don't know if all babies do that. Maybe they do. But he does it every night, usually around 2 in the morning. He makes this sound. It's not a full laugh. It's more like he heard something funny from very far away, and the sound comes through before he's quite awake." She looked at Noah. "It's the best sound I have ever heard in my life." Adrian looked at the sleeping baby. "And he doesn't like being on his back." Sophia continued. "He hates it. He will scream until you flip him over. I had to call the pediatrician 3 times in the first month because I was convinced something was wrong because he never wanted to sleep the way you're supposed to. Turns out he just has opinions." She almost smiled. "Strong ones." "Of course he does," Adrian said quietly. Something in his voice made her look at him. "He's mine," Adrian said. Just those 2 words. Without possessiveness. Without the edge she might have expected. Just a statement of a fact he was only now allowing himself to fully believe. She looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," she said. "He is." At 2:30 in the morning, a nurse named Patricia came in to check Noah's vitals and offered to bring them both coffee. Adrian said yes before Sophia could decline, and Patricia returned with 2 cups and a paper sleeve of sugar packets with such genuine kindness that Sophia had to look away for a moment to keep herself together. She had not expected kindness tonight. She had expected a confrontation. She had been steeled for one. She had spent the last hour since Adrian arrived waiting for the moment when the man she knew took over, the one who issued instructions and controlled timelines and made unilateral decisions and expected everyone around him to comply. That moment hadn't come. "You should sleep," Adrian said. She shook her head. "I'm not leaving him." "I didn't say leave. I said sleep." He glanced toward the small vinyl couch along the wall. "You can be in this room and still close your eyes." "Adrian." "Sophia." He said it simply. "You have been here for how long?" She looked at the clock. "Since 9. Almost 6 hours. You're exhausted, I can see it." "So are you." "I didn't know about him until 90 minutes ago," he said. "I'm still in the phase where I can't stop looking at him." "You've been here for 6 hours. You know he's stable. Close your eyes." She looked at him. There was something strange about this, the version of Adrian Moretti who told her to sleep, who handed her a cup of hospital coffee, who sat in a chair beside his son's crib at 2:30 in the morning in his expensive jacket and said, "Close your eyes," like it was the most natural thing in the world. This was not the man she had run from. Or maybe it was she thought. Maybe she had caught him in the moment before he remembered how to be that other man. She didn't know. She was too tired to know. She sat back against the couch and pulled her knees up and wrapped both hands around the coffee cup and said, "I want you to wake me the second anything changes." "I will." "I mean it. I know you mean it." "Adrian." "Sophia." His voice was quiet, direct. "I am not going to let something happen to him without waking you. You are his mother. Go to sleep." She went to sleep. Adrian sat in the quiet and watched his son breathe. He didn't reach into the crib yet. He didn't touch him. He wasn't ready for that, and he knew it. He had always known when he was not ready for something, even when he pretended otherwise. But he watched. He memorized. The small fists half open in sleep. The tiny flutter of breath. The way Noah's mouth moved slightly in whatever infants dreamed about. The sound of the monitors which had frightened him when he first walked in and had now become something he was oriented around the way he oriented around every system he needed to understand. He had spent 16 months believing his marriage had ended because love ran out. That was a clean story. A manageable story. A story that left the responsibility spread evenly across both of them and made the ending feel like something that simply happened instead of something anyone chose. Now he sat in this room and looked at this child and understood that it was a story he had told himself, because the true story was harder. The true story was that Sophia had been afraid. Not of him. Not exactly. Of what the life around him would do to the things she loved. And he had never asked her. He had never sat down across from her and said, "What are you afraid of?" because asking that question would have required admitting that the life he had built could generate fear in the people he loved. And that was an admission he was not built to make. He was built to solve problems. He was built to protect. He was not built to ask the woman he loved if the life he was protecting her with was the same thing that terrified her. Noah made a small sound in his sleep. Adrian leaned forward slightly. The sound faded. Then, quiet, unmistakable, like something drifting through from a long way away, a small half-laugh. Just as Sophia had described. Adrian sat very still. He felt something break open inside his chest. Not break like damage. Break like a door opening that had been sealed shut for a very long time. He looked at his son. "I don't know yet how to do this," he said very quietly. "I'm going to tell you that now because I think you deserve to know. I have been very good at many things in my life, and being wrong about the right ones is not something I'm comfortable with." Noah breathed. "But I am going to learn," Adrian said. "I am going to figure out what you need, and I am going to find every person in this city who can tell me how to give it to you, and I am not going to stop until I understand." He paused. "That is the only kind of promise I know how to make," he said, "the kind I actually keep." At 3 o'clock in the morning, a nurse came in to check vitals and looked at Adrian with the particular expression of someone deciding whether to speak. He looked back at her calmly. She spoke. "Mr. Moretti, I have to ask, are you planning to stay the night?" "Yes. There's a family lounge 2 doors down where you can—" "I'm staying in this room." She looked at Sophia asleep on the couch, then at him. "All right," she said, and she didn't push it further because some things didn't need to be pushed. She checked the monitors, made a notation, and went back out. Adrian turned back to Noah. The night stretched out. The monitors beeped. The rain had stopped finally, and Chicago was quiet in the way it was only at 3 or 4 in the morning. Not peaceful exactly, but resting. Noah slept, and across the room Sophia slept too, with her knees drawn up and her hands still loosely around the coffee cup she'd forgotten to put down. And Adrian Moretti, the most feared man in Chicago, a man who had spent 40 years learning how to need nothing, sat in a hospital chair between the two of them and did not move. He was not going to solve this tonight. He was not going to fix it tonight. But he was staying. And tonight, staying was the only thing that mattered. The shift changed at 6 in the morning. Dr. Carter came back with new results at 7:45. Sophia was awake by then, and they both stood on either side of Noah's crib, and Dr. Carter walked them through the updated assessment. "The preliminary genetic panel is back," she said. "And based on your family history, Mr. Moretti, combined with these results, I want to bring in a specialist from Children's Memorial for a second opinion. But what we're seeing is consistent with LQT2, that's a specific variant of long QT syndrome." She glanced between them. "The good news is that LQT2 is one of the most treatable variants. The bad news is that we need to move quickly and carefully." Sophia reached into the crib without thinking and put her hand over Noah's. "What does move quickly mean?" she said. "We want to start medication today, beta blockers to regulate his heart rhythm. We'll monitor him here for at least another 48 hours. Dr. Carter looked at her steadily. "He came through the worst of it last night. The arrhythmia was severe when he came in, and I want to be honest with you, it was serious. But he's stable now, and with the right management, he has every reason to have a completely normal life." Sophia exhaled. It wasn't a big breath, just a small compressed release of something she'd been holding in her chest since 9 o'clock the previous evening. Adrian said, "When can I speak with the specialist?" "I'll have someone reach out to set that up this morning. I want to speak with her today. I'll do my best." "Dr. Carter." His voice was quiet, but there was something underneath it. "This is my son. Please do better than your best." Dr. Carter looked at him for a moment. "I'll call her directly," she said. After she left, Adrian and Sophia stood on either side of the crib. Noah was awake now, and looking up at both of them with that particular expression infants have when they are taking inventory of their world, calm, thorough, a little judgmental. "Hi, Noah," Sophia said softly. Noah looked at her. Then he turned and looked at Adrian. Adrian looked back at him. "Hello," he said. He wasn't sure why he said it that formally. It just came out that way. Noah blinked, then made a sound. Something between a hum and a question. "I know," Adrian said. "I think we both have some things to figure out." Sophia looked across the crib at him. Something in her face shifted, just slightly. The way something shifts when you see a thing you were not expecting and don't quite know what to do with it. Adrian didn't look at her. He was still looking at his son. "We should talk," he said. "I know. Not about last night. Not about the decisions we both made. About what comes next." She was quiet for a moment. "Not today," she said finally. "Today, I just need to make sure he's okay." Adrian nodded. "Tomorrow, then." "Maybe tomorrow." She looked at Noah. He looked at Noah. And between them, The child who had unknowingly pulled two broken people back into the same room blinked at the ceiling and made another small sound, as if he were commenting on all of it. The rain, the monitors, the two adults trying to figure out what they owed each other and what they owed him. As if he had opinions. Strong ones. Of course he did. He was his father's son. Noah was discharged from the cardiac monitoring unit 49 hours after Adrian first walked through those hospital doors. Not home. Not yet. He was moved to a private room on the 4th floor, while Dr. Carter and the specialist she'd brought in from Children's Memorial, a quiet, precise woman named Dr. Ewan, completed the full diagnostic picture and calibrated the medication dosage. But the monitors were fewer. The beeping was softer. And when Sophia held him against her chest, Noah made the particular sound he made when he was satisfied with his situation. A low hum from somewhere deep in his small body, like a cat deciding the lap it had chosen was acceptable. Adrian had not left the hospital. Sophia noticed that by the end of the first day, and didn't know what to do with it. She had expected him to make appearances, the powerful man checking in on his investment, issuing instructions to the medical staff, then returning to his world. That was the version of Adrian she had prepared for. Instead, he had gone home once for 3 hours, changed clothes, handled what he described only as necessary things, and come back. He brought food, real food, not hospital cafeteria food, in bags from a restaurant on Michigan Avenue that Sophia recognized. He set it on the table in her room, without ceremony, and said, "Eat something." And then he sat down in the chair nearest Noah's new crib and went back to watching him. "You don't have to stay," Sophia said that second evening. "I know. Adrian, you have a company. You have people who depend on you making decisions." "I have Marco," he said. "Marco has been making my decisions when I'm not available for 12 years. He'll manage." Sophia looked at him. "You're not going to fight with me about this," he said. "Not a question." "I wasn't going to fight." "You had that look." "What look?" He glanced at her sideways. "The look you get when you've decided something is wrong, but you haven't decided yet whether it's worth saying out loud." She stared at him. In 2 years of marriage, Adrian Moretti had never once described her face to her. He had looked at her thousands of times. She knew that. But he had never translated what he saw into words, never reached across and said, "I know what that expression means." He seemed to realize what he'd said a moment after he said it. He turned back to Noah. Sophia turned back to her food. Neither of them mentioned it, but she kept it. Filed it away in whatever part of her was still keeping inventory on who this man was, compared to who he used to be. On the morning of the 3rd day, Dr. Yuen sat them both down. She was a small woman with a voice that carried the particular weight of someone who had delivered difficult news so many times. She had learned to make it land without destroying the people it landed on. "Noah is responding well to the beta blockers," she said. "His rhythm has been stable for 36 hours. That's a genuinely good sign." She set down her tablet. "Let me explain what long QT2 means for his life going forward, because I want you both to understand this fully." She talked for 20 minutes. Adrian took notes on his phone. Sophia asked questions, specific, informed questions, because she had spent the past 2 days reading everything she could find, the way she approached every problem she needed to solve. Dr. Ewan answered each one. At the end, she said, "The most important thing I can tell you is this. Children with properly managed LQT2 play sports. They go to school. They fall in love. They have families. What happened 3 nights ago was serious, and I don't want to minimize that. But it was also the beginning of understanding what he needs, not the end of anything." She looked at both of them. He is going to need 2 parents who understand his condition and who communicate clearly with each other. Medical events move fast. Information needs to move faster. The word communicate sat in the air between them. Adrian looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at Dr. Ewan. "We understand," Sophia said. Dr. Ewan left. The door closed. Sophia stood up and went to the window because she needed something to do with her body while she processed what the doctor had just said. Two parents who communicate clearly with each other. I heard her, Adrian said behind her. I know you did. I'm not going to use this as leverage, Sophia. She turned. I didn't say you were. You were thinking it. Adrian, you were, he said, not accusingly, just directly. And I understand why. I understand exactly why you would think that, given everything. But I want to say it out loud so there's no confusion. I am not going to use Noah's health to put you in a corner. That's not what this is. She looked at him. What is it then? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. It's me trying to figure out how to be in my son's life, he said. That's what it is. And I don't know how to do that from outside of it, so I am starting from the only place I can start from, which is here. Sophia looked at the floor. Then she said, Dr. Yuen is right. He's going to need both of us. Yes. That means we have to figure out how to be something. I don't know what, but something that works for him. I know. That is going to require us to have conversations I'm not sure either of us is ready to have. Adrian said, I've been ready since I walked through that emergency room door. That's not what I mean. She looked at him steadily. I mean the real conversations. Not about legal arrangements or custody schedules. The ones about why things ended. About what went wrong. And how. He held her gaze. Those two, he said. She studied him for another moment. Then she turned back to Noah, who was awake and extremely interested in a mobile that one of the nurses had hung above his crib, a set of small cloth fish in different colors that turned slowly. He's obsessed with the orange one, Sophia said. Adrian came to stand beside her. He looked at Noah, looking at the fish. Why the orange one? He said. I have no idea, but every time it comes around he does this thing with his hands. She demonstrated a quick double clutch like someone trying to grab something just out of reach. And then he gets furious when it goes away. He wants what he wants, Adrian said. Yes. That he gets from me. Sophia said nothing, but the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, something adjacent to one. Adrian noticed. He didn't say anything about it either. Meow. The afternoon of the third day was when things changed. Marco called at 2:15. Adrian took the call in the hallway, and Sophia could not hear what was said, but she could see him through the narrow window in the door. She watched the way he stood shift from the loose, observant posture he'd adopted over the past 2 days to something tighter, more angled, the way a man stands when the world he runs is pulling him back. He came back in after 7 minutes. I need to step out for a few hours, he said. Go, she said. I'll be back before 6. Adrian, I said go. She looked at him. I have been managing alone for 8 months. I can manage the afternoon. Something crossed his face. Not offense. Something more complicated than that. That's not, he started. I know that's not what you meant, she said. I'm just saying I'll be fine. He'll be fine. Do what you need to do. He stood in the doorway for a moment longer than necessary. I'll be back before 6, he said again. He was back at 5:40. He came in carrying 2 things, a paper bag from the bakery, 2 blocks from the hospital that Sophia had mentioned offhandedly the previous day. She had walked past it every morning on her way to work, and their coffee was the best she'd found on the north side, and a small stuffed animal. An orange fish. He set the coffee on the table. He handed the fish to Sophia without explaining it. She looked at it, then at him. You went looking for an orange fish, she said. It took 3 stores. She looked at the fish in her hand. Then she looked at Noah, who was watching the mobile with the focused intensity of a small person who had decided the universe owed him something specific. She walked to the crib and put the orange fish next to Noah. Noah looked at it. Then he grabbed it with both hands. He made a sound, not the half-laugh from sleep, something more immediate than that. A sound of genuine, uncomplicated satisfaction. Sophia stood there watching her son and felt something hit her in the chest so hard she almost had to sit down. Not because of the fish. Not even because of Noah's face. Because Adrian had paid attention. He had heard one throwaway detail. One small thing she mentioned once quickly. The way you mention things you don't expect anyone to retain, and he had walked out of this hospital and gone to 3 separate stores until he found it. And he hadn't made a production of it. He hadn't handed it to her with an explanation or an expectation. He had just given it to her, and let it be what it was. She turned to look at him. He was watching Noah, not her. "Thank you," she said. "He wanted it," Adrian said simply. That was all. She sat down. She drank the coffee. It was exactly as good as she'd said it was. The night before, Noah was scheduled to be discharged. Adrian and Sophia sat across from each other in the family lounge 2 doors down from Noah's room while a nurse covered the next feeding. It was the first time they had been in a room without Noah between them. It felt different. The hospital light was the same color it always was, that flat, institutional yellow that made everyone look slightly unwell. Sophia had her hands around a cup of tea. Adrian had coffee. The lounge was empty except for them. "I want to understand something," Adrian said. Sophia looked at him. "The firm you work for," he said. "Hartley and Associates, family law." "Yes?" "You were a legal assistant at Brennan and Cole when we met. Corporate contracts." "I know what I was doing when we met. I'm just noting that you changed fields." "I did." "Why?" She looked at her tea. "Because corporate contracts are about protecting assets," she said. "And after everything I wanted to do, work that was about protecting people." She paused. Specifically people who needed someone in their corner when everything was falling apart. People going through custody disputes and divorce and situations where the legal system feels like something that's happening to you instead of something that can help you. He was quiet. "People like who you were," he said. She looked up sharply. He wasn't being unkind. He was just stating it. "Yes," she said after a moment. "People like who I was." He nodded slowly. "Sophia." His voice shifted, got quieter. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." "I'll try." "Were you afraid of me? Not of my world, not of the business, of me specifically." He held her gaze. "Did I ever make you afraid?" The question sat between them. She could feel him holding himself very still, the way he went still when something mattered, and he couldn't afford to let it show how much. "No," she said. He exhaled slightly. "Not afraid of you," she continued. "I was never afraid you were going to hurt me, not like that." She looked at her hands. "I was afraid of becoming invisible." He frowned. "Every decision in our lives was yours," she said. "Where we lived, who provided security, what events I attended and which ones I didn't, where we traveled. I know you made those decisions because you were protecting me. I know that is genuinely how you understood it." She looked at him. "But day by day, choice by choice, I stopped being a person and became something you were protecting. And when I realized I was pregnant, I tried to imagine raising a child inside that, and I thought he would never learn to want things for himself if his father was always already deciding what he should want." Adrian was quiet for a long time. The coffee machine in the corner clicked and hummed. "You should have told me," he said at last. "I know. Not because I had a right to override your decision, but because I didn't know. I didn't know that's what I was doing." She looked at him carefully. "You didn't," she said. He was quiet again. "Not consciously," he said. "But," he set down his cup, "but I have spent my entire adult life operating in a world where control is safety," he said. "Where the moment you let go of something, it becomes a vulnerability. Where the person you don't protect gets taken. I have seen what happens when powerful men lose control of the things they love." His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. "My father controlled everything around him, and he still lost everything. And I thought if I just did it better, managed it more completely." He stopped. "I didn't understand that I was applying the same logic to you." Sophia was watching him. "I'm not telling you this as an excuse," he said. I'm telling you because you asked me to have the real conversations. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me." He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I'm aware of that." Something shifted between them again. Not resolution, they were nowhere near resolution. But something opened. Some window that had been painted shut for 16 months cracked slightly, and the air that came through was not warm exactly, but it was real. "So what happens now?" Sophia said. "I want to be in his life," Adrian said. "Not on the edges of it, in it. I'm not going to fight you on that. I know." He paused. "But I also want you to understand something. I am not coming back into this as the man I was. I don't know exactly yet who I am becoming, but I know it is not the same person." "How do I know that?" "You don't," he said. "Not yet. And I'm not going to ask you to take it on faith." He looked at her steadily. "Let me show you, that's all I'm asking. Don't decide yet. Just let me show you." Sophia held his gaze for a long moment. Then she looked away. "I'm taking him back to my apartment," she said. "When he's discharged, I'm not asking you to do anything else," he said immediately. She looked at him, a little surprised. "I know the apartment," he said. "I know the street. I know the building has a security guard on the night shift and 2 cameras on the front entrance." He saw her face. "I'm not having you surveilled, Sophia. I needed to know you were safe. After—" He paused. "After you were gone." She stared at him. "You've been watching my building," she said slowly. "Not watching, aware." He held her gaze. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "There is. I never intervened. I never made contact. I needed to know." His voice tightened slightly. "I thought you left because you didn't love me anymore. I still needed to know you were safe." Sophia sat back in her chair. She was trying to decide how she felt about this. She couldn't quite find the right emotion for it. It was too complicated, threaded through with things that were both wrong and understandable in the same breath. "That needs to stop," she said finally. "It already has," he said. "From the moment I walked into this hospital." She studied him. "Why?" "Because now I know where you are," he said, "and how you're doing. And I'm going to know going forward, not because I'm watching, but because we're going to figure out how to tell each other." She said nothing. "I would like to see him 3 times a week," Adrian said. "At your apartment or somewhere public, wherever is most comfortable for you. I'm not asking for overnight visits yet. I'm not asking for anything that requires you to trust me more than you currently do." He looked at her directly. "I'm just asking to be there." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. The coffee machine clicked again. Down the hall, she could hear the faint sound of a television from another room, late-night news, or maybe a nature documentary. Something with a calm narrator voice. 3 times a week, she said. To start. She looked at her tea. "Okay," she said. He didn't smile. He didn't reach across the table. He didn't make it into a moment. He just nodded and picked up his coffee cup. And that the not making it into a moment was the thing that made Sophia think for the first time that maybe something actually was different. Noah came home on a Thursday. Sophia carried him through her front door at noon while Adrian carried the hospital bag and the small orange fish and the discharge instructions from Dr. Yuan that ran to 4 pages and covered every scenario from medication timing to what to do in the event of another cardiac episode. It was the first time Adrian had been in her apartment. He didn't look around the way she expected. He didn't inventory the space or assess the security of the windows or make any comment at all about the size of it, a 1-bedroom that was comfortable for her and Noah, but modest by any measure compared to what he was used to. He set the bag down where she pointed. He handed her the fish. She settled Noah in the bassinet in her room and Adrian stood in the doorway. "I'll go," he said. She looked at him from across the room. "You could stay another hour," she said. "If you want." He did. He sat at her kitchen table and she made coffee, real coffee, in the small espresso maker she'd bought herself for her birthday. And Noah slept in his bassinet with the orange fish tucked next to him, and they sat across from each other and talked. Not about custody arrangements, not about what had happened or what came next, about Noah, about the specific sound he made when he was hungry versus when he was just restless. About the way he reacted to music. He was completely indifferent to most of what Sophia played, but absolutely riveted by a particular jazz record she'd bought from a street vendor on the north side. About the faces he made during his pediatric appointments, specifically a look of profound personal betrayal when the thermometer appeared. Adrian listened to all of it with the focused attention of a man committing information to permanent storage. He asked questions. Not interrogation-style questions, just the questions of someone trying to assemble a full picture of a person they were only beginning to know. "What does he weigh?" he asked at one point. "He was 18 pounds at his last checkup. Is that normal for 8 months?" "The doctor said it's good. He's in the 75th percentile." Adrian nodded, filed it. "And the medication, it's once a day. Twice. Morning and before bed. Dr. Ewan said it needs to be consistent, same time every day." She looked at him. "Which means, if you're with him during those windows, you need to know how to give it." "Then show me." So she did. She walked him through it, the small oral syringe, the exact dosage, how to get a baby who was absolutely convinced he did not want anything in his mouth to take medication without turning it into a wrestling match. He watched carefully. He asked 2 clarifying questions. He did not pretend he had already understood before she finished explaining. At 4 o'clock, he stood up. "I'll come Saturday," he said. "Saturday is fine." He looked toward the bassinet. She watched him look at Noah the particular way he did it, like someone who had been given something precious and was still not entirely sure they were allowed to hold it. "He's going to be okay," she said. Adrian looked at her. "Yes," he said. "He is." He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He was at the door when she said, "Adrian." He turned. "I'm not saying everything is fine," she said. "I'm not saying this is going to be easy or that I've decided anything. I know, but..." She paused. "Thank you. For the past 3 days. For staying." He held her gaze. "I should have been there from the beginning," he said. "I don't get credit for showing up when things were already broken." She opened her mouth. "But I will take the thank you," he added, and something shifted slightly in his face. Not quite a smile, but the place just to the left of one. She remembered that about him. That exact expression. He used to make it when he was saying something that meant more than it sounded. "Saturday," she said. "Saturday," he confirmed. And he left. Sophia stood in her kitchen for a long moment after the door closed, listening to the sound of Noah breathing from the other room, the quiet of a Thursday afternoon settling around her. She did not know what was coming. She knew what she was afraid of, that this version of Adrian would fade, that the man who went to 3 stores for an orange fish would be replaced by the man who scheduled her whole life without asking. She knew that fear was legitimate. She knew it was based on evidence. But she also knew that she had said she would let him show her. And whatever else Adrian Moretti was, he had always kept his word. Saturday he arrived at 9 in the morning, which was not what she had expected. She had expected him at a reasonable hour, 10, maybe 10:30, the kind of time that communicated competence and respect for her schedule. He texted at 8:45. "I know this is early. Noah's second medication window is 9:15. I didn't want to miss it." She stared at the text for 10 seconds. Then she unlocked the door and went back to the kitchen to start coffee. He came in and went directly to where Noah was in his bouncer and crouched down in front of him. "Good morning," he said. Noah stared at him with the evaluation expression. Adrian did not seem bothered by being evaluated. "I know," he said. "I'm still new. Give me some time." Noah grabbed the orange fish, which was permanently in reach at this point, and offered it to him. Adrian looked at it. Then he took it very carefully, as if it had been offered in a formal negotiation. "Thank you," he said. Noah immediately wanted it back. "That's fair," Adrian said, and returned it. Sophia watched this from the kitchen doorway and felt something she hadn't expected to feel. Something warm. Something that had edges she was not ready to examine. She turned back to the coffee. At 9:15, she brought out the medication. "Do you want to do it?" she said. He looked at her. "You watched me do it," she said. "You asked the questions. Either you were paying attention or you weren't." It was a test. They both knew it was a test. He took the syringe. He did it exactly the way she had shown him, patient, steady, waiting for the right moment, letting Noah make the small, grumpy sound he always made about it before he swallowed. He handed the syringe back. She said nothing, but she gave him a nod. Small, almost imperceptible. He saw it. They sat on opposite ends of her living room floor, with Noah between them, and he learned things. He learned that Noah could not be rushed through tummy time without a complete emotional collapse. He learned that the orange fish, when held above Noah's head at exactly the right angle, produced a very specific sound of delight that had the approximate quality of a small trumpet. He learned that Noah's favorite position was being held upright against someone's chest with his head at their shoulder, because from there he could watch everything happening in the room and form opinions about it. Adrian held him like that for 40 minutes. He sat very still so as not to disturb the position, and he talked quietly, a low, continuous murmur just above a whisper. Sophia was on the couch, ostensibly reading, not reading. "I don't know what you like yet," Adrian was saying to Noah. "We're still in the early stages, but I've already established that you like the orange fish and jazz music and being upright, and you dislike being on your stomach and medication and waiting." He paused. "I also already know that you have my grandfather's eyes, and that is either something to be proud of or something to take very seriously. Probably both." Another pause. "He was a complicated man. Most men in my family are." The quietest pause. "I'm going to try to be less complicated for you. I don't know how good I'll be at that, but I'm going to try." Sophia turned a page she hadn't read. Noah made a sound against Adrian's shoulder. "I know," Adrian said. She set down the book. "Adrian," she said. He looked up. She looked at him. Really looked at him the way she hadn't allowed herself to fully do since he walked into that emergency room. The man she had married. The man she had run from. The man sitting on her living room floor with their son against his chest, talking to an 8-month-old about the complicated men of his family, as if this were the most natural thing he had ever done. "Who taught you to do this?" she said. He looked at her, not understanding. "To just be here, quietly, without needing it to be something." She gestured vaguely. "This isn't how I remember you." He was quiet for a moment. "Nobody taught me," he said. "I'm making it up as I go." She stared at him. "That's terrifying," she said. "I know. You never make anything up as you go." "I know that too." His voice was even. "But I don't have a playbook for this. I don't have a model. My father he was a man who loved us. But love in my family looked like management. Like keeping everyone inside a perimeter and calling the perimeter love." He looked at Noah. "I don't want to be that for him. So I am doing the only thing I can think of, which is to show up and pay attention and try not to repeat mistakes I've spent 40 years making." Sophia said nothing, because there was nothing to say. Not yet. Not today. But she let herself look at him for one more moment before she picked up the book again, and in that moment she was honest with herself in the way she rarely allowed herself to be. She did not know who this man was becoming, but she was beginning to wonder if she wanted to find out. 3 weeks after Noah came home, Marco Rinaldi appeared at Sophia's door. Not Adrian. Marco. She opened it and found him standing on the landing in a dark coat, very correct, holding an envelope. She had met Marco twice during her marriage. She had always liked him in the careful, distant way you liked someone who worked for someone powerful. You saw his competence. You respected his discretion. You kept a certain amount of space between warmth and trust. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "I apologize for coming without calling first. Mr. Moretti doesn't know I'm here." That made her stand up straighter. "Then why are you here?" Marco looked at her steadily. Because there's something you need to know, he said, and Mr. Moretti isn't going to tell you himself. She opened the door wider. He came in. He did not sit down. He stood in her entryway and said in the same measured voice she had heard him use to handle 100 things. Mr. Moretti has spent the past 3 weeks making changes to his business operations, significant ones. He paused. He has terminated 3 contracts that connected the organization to a network that I will describe only as extra-legal. He has brought in an independent compliance firm to review all current financial operations. He has also been in contact with a federal liaison whose role involves providing exits for people in certain business situations who want them. Sophia was very still. He's cooperating with federal authorities, she said slowly. He is exploring a formalized relationship that would require significant restructuring of operations, Marco said carefully. He has not discussed this with anyone inside the organization. He has not told his legal team. He has not told his family. A pause. He has told no one. I know because I handle his calendar and his calls, and I know who he is speaking with. Then why are you telling me? Marco was quiet for the moment. Because in 16 years, he said, I have never seen him do anything that was not strategic. Every decision he makes has a logic. Every action is part of a structure. He looked at her directly. What he is doing right now has no logic. It is costing him significant leverage. It is creating significant risk. It will take years to complete, and in the meantime, it makes him vulnerable in ways that people in his position cannot afford to be vulnerable. So he's not doing it for strategy. No, Marco said. He is not. She looked at the envelope in his hands. What's that? It's for Noah. Mr. Moretti prepared it 3 days ago and then put it in his drawer. Marco held it out. It's an educational trust, fully funded. The terms specify that the management of the trust belongs entirely to you until Noah reaches adulthood. Mr. Moretti has retained no control over it. He paused. He is aware that you might reject it. He prepared it anyway. Sophia looked at the envelope. She did not take it immediately. Why didn't he give it to me himself? She said. I believe, Marco said carefully, that he was afraid it would look like the old way of doing things, like he was trying to manage the situation, and he was not sure how to give it to you without it looking that way. A pause. So he put it in his drawer, and I took it out. She stared at Marco. He looked back at her with the expression of a man who had served someone for 16 years and understood them better than almost anyone alive, and had decided that this one time he was going to do something his employer did not ask him to do. She took the envelope. Thank you, Marco, she said. He nodded. He's not the same man, Ms. Bennett, he said quietly. I want you to know that. In 16 years, I have never said that, but I'm saying it now. He let himself out. Sophia stood in her entryway with the envelope in her hands. From the other room, she could hear Noah waking from his nap, the small preliminary sounds he made before the announcement, the pre-cry inventory of grievances. She set the envelope on the kitchen counter. She went to get her son. She lifted him from the bassinet and held him against her shoulder the way Adrian had held him, and felt the warm, solid weight of him against her, and looked at the envelope on the counter. She would call Adrian tonight. Not to talk about the envelope. Not yet. Just to check in. Just to tell him Noah had a good afternoon. Just to be the thing Dr. Ewan had told them they needed to be 2 people who communicated clearly. That was all. For now, that was all. But she held her son and looked at that envelope, and she thought about a man who spent 3 weeks quietly dismantling the world he had built for reasons that had no strategic logic whatsoever. And she thought, I am beginning to find out who you are becoming. I think I need to pay attention. The call came at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after Noah came home from the hospital. Sophia was in the kitchen measuring out Noah's morning medication when her phone rang. Unknown number. Chicago area code. She almost didn't answer, She had learned a long time ago that unknown numbers before 8 in the morning were never good news. But something made her pick up. The same instinct maybe that had made Adrian pick up the hospital's call 7 weeks ago. "Ms. Bennett?" A man's voice, older, very controlled. "My name is Daniel Voss. I'm a senior agent with the FBI's Organized Crime Division in Chicago. I'd like to speak with you today if possible." Sophia set down the medication syringe very carefully. "About what?" she said. "About Adrian Moretti," he said. "And about your son." She was quiet for 3 full seconds. "How do you know about my son?" she said. "Ms. Bennett," Voss said, and his voice shifted slightly, not softer, but more deliberate, the way someone speaks when they want you to understand that what they're saying next matters. "That's exactly what I need to talk to you about." She called Adrian before she called back. He picked up on the first ring. "FBI," she said. "A man named Daniel Voss. He knows about Noah." The silence on his end lasted exactly 2 seconds. "Don't call him back yet," Adrian said. "Don't call him back until I know what this is." "Adrian." 30 minutes, he said. "Give me 30 minutes. She gave him 20 before she called Marco directly. Marco answered and said, "I know," before she could say anything. "Mr. Moretti called me as soon as he hung up with you. He's already making calls." "Who is Daniel Voss?" A brief pause. "He's real. He's FBI. He is specifically assigned to the task force that has been building a case against 3 major organized crime organizations in Chicago for the past 4 years. Another pause. "One of those organizations is the Moretti Network." Sophia sat down at her kitchen table. "How long have they been building this case?" she said. 4 years, Marco said. "But there has been an acceleration in the past 8 weeks. 8 weeks. Since the night a hospital called Adrian Moretti to tell him he had a son. Since someone somewhere started watching more carefully." "Marco," she said, "who leaked Noah's existence?" The pause this time was longer. "We don't know yet," he said. "Mr. Moretti is working on that." "But someone did." "Yes," Marco said quietly. "Someone did." She hung up and sat with her hands flat on the table and looked at Noah, who was in his bouncer completely occupied with the orange fish, entirely unaware that his name was being spoken in rooms full of dangerous people. Adrian arrived at her apartment at 8:45. He had not texted first. She heard the knock and knew before she opened the door. He came in and went straight to Noah the way he always did. Now checked him first every time before anything else, and she watched him crouch in front of the bouncer and put one hand lightly on Noah's head for just a moment. Then he stood up and turned to her. "Tell me exactly what Voss said," he said. She told him, word for word, because she had very good recall for conversations that frightened her, and this one had. Adrian listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "I need to tell you something." She waited. 6 weeks ago, he said, "I began a process of formalizing cooperation with a federal liaison. I have been in conversation with the government about restructuring the business operations and providing information in exchange for certain considerations." He held her gaze. "I told no one. I thought I had been careful." "You weren't," she said. "No," he said. "I wasn't. Someone inside your organization found out." "It appears so." "And they leaked Noah to retaliate, or to use him as leverage against you." He was quiet. "Adrian." She kept her voice even, but something underneath it had an edge. "Our son's name is in the hands of organized crime figures who now know that you are cooperating with the federal government." "Yes." "That is exactly the thing I spent 16 months trying to prevent." He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I kept him secret from you because I was afraid of your world, and now your world knows he exists before you even had a chance to know him properly. Sophia, I am not blaming you." She said it sharply, not because she was angry at him specifically, but because the anger had to go somewhere. and her voice was the only thing she could control right now. I am telling you what is true. Our son is in danger because of who you are. That is not an accusation. That is the situation. Yes, he said again. Just that. Not a defense. Not a justification. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "What do we do?" And Adrian said, "We call Voss." They met Voss at a federal building downtown at noon. He was a large man, 50s, with the particular exhaustion of someone who had been doing hard work for a very long time. He shook Sophia's hand and looked at Adrian with the specific neutrality of a man who had spent 4 years building a case against someone and was now sitting across from them in a conference room. "I want to start," Voss said, "by being direct with you both." "Please," Adrian said. 3 days ago, we intercepted a communication between a mid-level figure in the Calabrese organization and an unknown party. The communication referenced your son by name, Ms. Bennett. It referenced his medical condition. It referenced his address. Voss looked at both of them steadily. The Calabrese organization is one of the 3 groups we have been building a case against. They are aware through sources inside your operation, Mr. Moretti, that you have been in contact with my office. They're going to use Noah, Sophia said. They intend to, Voss said. We intercepted plans at an early stage. Nothing has been acted on yet, but the intelligence is credible and the threat is real. The room was quiet. What kind of threat? Adrian said. Voss looked at him directly. The kind that is meant to stop you from talking to us, he said. Adrian's face showed nothing. But Sophia felt something change in him, not visibly, not in any way. Anyone who didn't know him would catch. Something underneath. Something that went very still in a particular way, the way things went still when Adrian Moretti made a decision he was not going to unmake. Mr. Moretti, Voss said, what I'm about to say is not a negotiation. It's information. We believe that the fastest way to neutralize this threat is to accelerate the timeline of your cooperation. If the Calabrese organization believes they have time to act, they will. If the case moves quickly enough to make that action pointless, they won't. You want me to move faster, Adrian said. I want you to understand that your window is smaller than you thought. Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair. What protection does my son have in the meantime? He said. Voss looked at him. What protection does his mother have? Mr. Moretti. These are not difficult questions, Agent Voss. What physical protection can your office provide for a 9-month-old child and his mother while we are having this conversation? Voss was quiet for a moment. Then he said, we can provide monitoring and rapid response. We cannot provide round-the-clock protective detail at this stage without making the situation more visible. So the answer is limited, Adrian said. The answer is that we are working as fast as we can. That is not an answer. Adrian. Sophia said his name quietly. He looked at her. She held his gaze for a moment. Something passed between them, the particular communication of 2 people who had spent enough time in the same room to have a language that didn't need words. Don't close the door here. We need him. He turned back to Voss. What do you need from me specifically? He said. And on what timeline? They were in the elevator on the way down when Sophia said it. You wanted to pull your men in. He looked at her. When Voss said the protection was limited, she said, I could see it. You were calculating how many of your own people you could deploy around my building without making it obvious. He was quiet. That's still your first instinct, she said. Not accusatory. Observational. Crisis happens and you start building a wall. It works, he said. It works until it doesn't. The elevator doors opened. They walked out into the lobby. He held the door. She walked through. Outside, the November air had gone sharper colder. She pulled her coat around her. I can keep him safe, Adrian said. I know you can, she said. That's not what I'm asking. He looked at her. I'm asking if you can keep him safe without turning his life into a compound, she said. Because Voss is right. The fastest way through this is through it. Not around it. Not over it. Through it. She looked at him steadily. If you fill my street with your people, the Calabrese organization sees it, and they know exactly where to look. But if we work with Voss, it takes time we might not have. We have to make the time, she said. He was quiet. She watched him process it. The same mental structure building she'd watched for 2 years. The way he assembled information and ran it through whatever internal system he used to make decisions. The difference now was that he wasn't making this decision alone, and he knew it. I want 2 of my people on your building, he said. Plain clothes, not visible. I want to know someone is there. She thought about it. 1? She said. He looked at her. 1, she said again. Someone good, someone discreet, and I need to know their name. He nodded once. His name is Carter, he said. He's been with me for 9 years. He has a daughter. She tilted her head slightly. You told me that because you thought it would matter to me, she said. It's also true. She looked at him for a long moment. Carter, she said. Fine. Subbed. She went back to work the next day. She had taken 2 weeks of leave when Noah was in the hospital, and another 2 weeks after he came home, and now she was back at Hartley and Associates with a baby monitor app on her phone. And Noah in the care of a woman named Rosie, 62 years old, raised 4 children, certified in infant first aid and CPR, and newly briefed on Noah's cardiac condition with a laminated sheet of emergency instructions that Sophia had made her promise to read every morning. Her boss, David Hartley, was a man in his late 50s who had been practicing family law for 30 years and had seen most things. He saw Sophia come in on that Wednesday morning and said simply, "How is he?" "Stable," she said. "Good, actually. Dr. Ewan is very happy with how he's responding to the medication." "And you?" David said. She looked at him. "Working on it," she said. He nodded. That was the end of it because David Hartley was also the kind of man who knew when people needed to work and not be asked how they were feeling about their lives. She was in a client meeting at 2 o'clock when her phone buzzed. She had it face up on the table and she saw the name before she could stop herself. Adrian. "Excuse me one moment," she said to her client and stepped out. "What happened?" she said. "Nothing happened," he said. "I wanted to tell you something," she exhaled. "Don't call me in the middle of a client meeting unless something happened." "I know, I'm sorry, but I thought you'd want to know today." "Know what?" "I had a meeting this morning with my attorney and the federal liaison. We have a preliminary agreement on the cooperation framework." His voice was steady. "It's going to take 8 to 12 months to fully implement, but the framework is agreed." She leaned against the wall. "What does that mean for the Calabrese situation?" she said. "Voss is moving simultaneously. He's using the intelligence from the intercepted communication to apply pressure from another direction. He believes that once Calabrese understands the cooperation is already formalized, the value of any threat against Noah drops to 0. "He believes," she said. "Yes." "That's not the same as knows." "No," he said. "It's not." She was quiet for a moment. "Adrian," she said. "Are you scared?" A pause. Longer than his pauses usually were. For him, yes. His voice was even, but something underneath it wasn't. "I have spent my entire adult life not being afraid of anything in my world. I know how to operate inside risk. I know how to evaluate threat and manage it." Another pause. "I don't know how to be afraid for a 9-month-old who laughs in his sleep. I don't have a framework for that." She closed her eyes for a moment. "Neither do I," she said. "I know. We figure it out together," she said. "That's the only option." "Yes," he said. "That's what I'm doing." She went back into her meeting. She got through the rest of the afternoon on the particular autopilot that mothers who are also professionals, who are also humans, operating at the edge of their emotional bandwidth, develop out of necessity. At 5:30, she picked Noah up from Rosie's and held him for a full 2 minutes in the doorway before she could make herself move. He smelled like baby shampoo and the particular warmth that was just him. "Hi," she said into the top of his head. "We're okay." He grabbed her hair. "Yes," she said. "We're okay." Hey. The first confrontation happened on a Friday night 3 weeks after the meeting with Voss. Adrian had come for his regular visit. He was up to 4 times a week now, which had happened gradually and without either of them formally deciding it. And he and Sophia had put Noah to bed together, which had also happened gradually, the two of them developing an efficient and mostly wordless bedtime routine that involved a specific order of events Noah had made extremely clear he required. They were in the kitchen after, and Sophia was making tea, and Adrian was looking at his phone with an expression she recognized. "Tell me," she said. He looked up. "There was an incident at one of my properties this afternoon," he said. "Minor. No one was hurt, but it was deliberate." She turned fully to face him. "The Calabrese organization." "Almost certainly." He set his phone down. "It's a message. They know we've formalized with Voss. They're telling me they can still reach me." "Can they?" He held her gaze. "Everyone can be reached," he said. "The question is the cost." "What's the cost of reaching you right now?" "High enough that they're working with messages instead of actions," he said. "They're not ready to move directly, not yet." He paused. "But the pressure is going to increase before it decreases. I want to be honest with you about that." She looked at him. She had been waiting for this. She had known from the moment Voss laid it out in that conference room that there would be a period between the beginning of the cooperation and the end of the threat when things would be most dangerous. She had known it, and she had prepared herself for it, and she had thought she was ready. She was not entirely ready. "What do you need to do?" she said. "I need to give Voss more information faster," he said, "which means accelerating something I was planning to do over months into weeks." He looked at her directly. "It also means that there is going to be a period, probably 2 to 3 weeks, where the risk is higher than it is right now, before the case is solid enough to neutralize the threat." She set down the tea. "You said you wanted to keep him safe without turning his life into a compound," she said. "I remember. I still mean that." She looked at him steadily. "But I also want you to tell me honestly, is Carter enough?" "One person on the building." He held her gaze. "No," he said. She sat down. "How many?" she said. "3," he said. "Positioned differently, still not visible, but enough to cover all entry points." She looked at the table. "And my office," she said. He was already looking at her when she looked up. "I put someone there 2 days ago," he said. She stared at him. "Sophia, you put someone on my office 2 days ago without telling me," she said. "I was going to tell you tonight." "After you'd already done it." He held her gaze and did not flinch. "Yes," he said. She felt the anger come up fast and sharp. "Adrian, I know," he said. "I know exactly what you're going to say. I made a unilateral decision. I did not consult you. I acted the way I always act." He held up one hand, not defensively. "I am going to tell you why, and then you are going to do whatever you decide to do with that information." She waited. "Because I was afraid," he said simply. "Because for 2 days I have been sitting with information about a credible threat against you and our son, and I could not make myself wait another 48 hours to tell you before doing something about it. Not because I don't respect your autonomy, but because the thought of something happening to you while I was being careful about the process." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "I would not survive that." The silence in the kitchen was total. She looked at him. He looked back at her. "That is not a justification," he said. "I understand that fear does not give me the right to make decisions about your life. I am telling you the truth about why I did it." She looked at the table. She wanted to be angry. She had every reason to be angry. This was the pattern she had left. This was the exact dynamic she had spent 16 months rebuilding herself away from, but he had told her. He had come here tonight and told her knowing she would be angry, knowing it was going to reopen everything between them. He had not hidden it. He had not let her find out some other way. "The person at my office," she said. "Who is it?" "A woman named Sandra Reeves. She has been with me for 6 years. She drives a blue Honda and parks in the public lot on the corner. She is—" "I know what she looks like," Sophia said. He stopped. She looked at him. "I noticed her Monday," she said quietly. "Gray coat, coffee from the place across the street. She sits near the elevator." Adrian was very still. "You noticed," he said. "I notice things," she said. "I always have. You used to not give me credit for that." He was quiet. "Is she good?" Sophia said. "Very good," he said. "She's the best I have." Sophia looked at the table again. Then she said, "You put your best person on me, not on yourself." "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her directly. "Because you are the one I cannot replace," he said. It came out without calculation, without strategy, just truth, the way truth sometimes arrived before you had the chance to decide whether to let it. The kitchen was very quiet. Sophia looked at her tea. "Leave Sandra where she is," she said finally. He exhaled. "But you tell me," she said. "Every time, every decision. You don't do it and then tell me. You tell me first." "Yes," he said. "I mean it, Adrian." "I know you mean it. If you make one more unilateral decision about my safety or Noah's without talking to me first, I will—" She paused, looking for the right word. "I will take him somewhere you won't find us, and this time I will make sure of it." He looked at her. "I believe you," he said. "Good," she said. She pushed the tea toward him. After a moment, he took it. The second confrontation happened 9 days later. It did not involve the Calabrese organization. It did not involve Voss. It did not involve anyone with a threat or a weapon or a plan. It happened in Sophia's living room on a Sunday afternoon, and it started with a photograph. Adrian had been going through something on his phone while Noah slept, and Sophia had come to sit near him, and he had shown her a photograph without thinking about it first, the way you show someone something, when the instinct to share it moves faster than the instinct to consider whether you should. It was a photograph of his mother, Elena Moretti, 71 years old, living in a house in Lincoln Park that Adrian paid for and had kept paying for through everything. A small, elegant woman in the photograph standing in what looked like a garden. Sophia looked at the photograph. Then she looked at him. "She doesn't know," she said. It was not quite a question. "No," he said. "About Noah." "No." Sophia looked at the photograph again. "Adrian," she said carefully. "Your mother is 71 years old. She has a grandson she has never met. He has been alive for 9 months." He said nothing. "Does she know we divorced?" "Yes." "Does she know why?" A pause. "She knows what I told her." "What did you tell her?" He set the phone down. "I told her it didn't work out," he said. "I told her you needed a different life than the one I had built." He looked at his hands. "I didn't tell her the specifics, because the specifics would have required me to say things out loud that I was not ready to say out loud. Like the fact that you controlled everything," Sophia said. He looked at her. "Like that," he said. Sophia sat back. "She has her grandson's eyes," she said quietly. "You told me that yourself. You said Noah looked like your father." She paused. "Your father's eyes came from somewhere." Adrian was quiet for a long time. "She had a very hard life," he said finally. "She lived inside a world she didn't choose. She loved my father, and my father loved her, and they spent 40 years managing within the structure of the world my grandfather built and my father inherited." He looked at the phone. "I used to think she was at peace with it. I think now that she made peace with it because she didn't see another option. And you don't want her to see Noah through that lens? Sophia said. He looked at her. I don't want Noah to meet his grandmother for the first time inside the same world that put his mother on the run, he said. Sophia was quiet. When this is over, she said. What? When the cooperation with Voss is complete. When the Calabrese threat is neutralized. When the legal restructuring is done. She looked at him steadily. When your world looks different than it does right now, then you introduce Noah to his grandmother. He studied her. That could be 8 months from now, he said. I know. She's 71. I know that too, Sophia said. Which is exactly why you need to go see her. Not with Noah, just you. She paused. Tell her the truth, Adrian. Not what happened. What you did wrong. She raised you. She knows you. She deserves the real version. He looked at her for a long moment. You are telling me to go confess to my mother, he said. I am telling you to go have an honest conversation with the woman who loves you, she said. It might feel like confession. That's probably appropriate. Something moved in his face. Not quite a smile, but adjacent to one in the place where his face kept almost smiles that he hadn't quite decided to release. You're not what I expected, he said. She raised an eyebrow. When you walked into that emergency room, she said, I wasn't what you expected either. No, he said. You weren't. A beat. I'll go see her, he said. Good. Shaw. He went to see Elena Moretti on a Tuesday evening, and he was there for 3 hours, and he did not tell Sophia what was said. He told her one thing. He texted her at 9:47 that night. She cried. I haven't seen my mother cry in 20 years. She wants to meet him when it's safe. She said she always knew you were smarter than me. Sophia read it and felt something ache in her chest in a way that was not entirely unpleasant. She typed back, she's right. 3 dots appeared. Then I know. She set her phone down and went to check on Noah, who was asleep with the orange fish pressed against his face, which she gently repositioned, because Dr. Ewan had been extremely clear about safe sleep practices. She stood and looked at him for a moment, 9 months old. The cause of everything that had shifted in the past 2 months. The person who had unknowingly pulled 2 broken people into the same room and kept them there long enough for something to change. She thought about what Marco had said. He's not the same man. She thought about Adrian sitting in her kitchen 3 days ago, saying I would not survive that without any of the calculations she used to see behind his words. She thought about the orange fish, and the educational trust in the drawer, and the 3 stores he'd gone to, and the way he spoke to Noah when he thought she wasn't listening. She thought about a man who had spent his entire adult life running a world built on control, making a deal with the federal government, and accepting vulnerability in every direction, because a child he had never met was fighting for his life in a hospital room. She was not there yet. She did not know where there was or whether she was moving toward it or just standing still. But she looked at her son sleeping and thought, I am paying attention. I am still paying attention. Checked. The threat moved from message to action on a Wednesday morning 17 days later. Sophia was walking to work. It was a short walk 12 minutes from her building to the Hartley and Associates office, a route she had taken 5 mornings a week for 14 months. She knew every block. She knew the coffee cart on the second corner, and the woman who ran it, and the dog that always sat beside the cart, and the particular way the light hit the buildings at 7:45 in the morning. She was at the 5th block when a black car slowed beside her. She noticed it the way she had learned to notice things, not with alarm, just with attention. A car slowing beside a pedestrian at 7:45 was not inherently alarming. It happened. But the window came down, and the man inside said her name. Ms. Bennett. She stopped. The man in the car was in his 50s, well-dressed, pleasant expression. The kind of face that was designed to look unremarkable. My name is Franklin, he said. I work for some people who have an interest in how things develop between your son's father and certain government agencies. He paused. We thought it would be worth having a conversation. Sophia looked at him. She felt her heartbeat in her throat. She felt the cold morning air on her face. She felt the 12 minutes between her and her office and the 7 minutes in the other direction back to her building. She also felt somewhere behind her, and slightly to the left, the particular stillness of someone who was very good at being there without being seen. Sandra. "I don't have anything to say to you," Sophia said. "Ms. Bennett, whatever you think this conversation is going to accomplish," she said very evenly, "it is not going to accomplish it. I want you to understand that clearly." The man named Franklin looked at her. "Your son is very young," he said. Something cold moved through her. "He is," she said. "He's also the son of Adrian Moretti." A pause. "That is the point of this conversation," Franklin said. "No," Sophia said. "That's the end of it." She walked. She walked steadily. Not fast, not slow, because she had read enough of Adrian's files over 2 years of marriage to know that showing fear to the wrong people was the most expensive thing you could do. She heard the car not follow. She counted her steps. She got to the corner and took out her phone and called Adrian. He picked up in half a second. "A man named Franklin," she said. "Black car. He stopped me on Weston Street." "Where are you right now?" "Corner of Weston and Marsh. Sandra is behind me." She heard him exhale. "Keep walking to your office," he said. "Sandra will stay with you. Don't stop anywhere." "I know," she said. "Sophia, Adrian." Her voice was steady. She made it steady. "I handled it. I kept walking. Now I need you to call Voss." A pause. "Are you okay?" he said. She thought about it honestly. "I'm going to be," she said. "Call Voss." She kept walking. Behind her, Sandra kept her distance and kept pace. Neither of them acknowledged the other. Adrian called Voss. And Voss, when he heard what had happened, said something that changed everything. He said, "We're ready to move. I've been waiting for them to make direct contact. This is what I needed. Mr. Moretti, can you be in my office in 2 hours?" Adrian was already in his car. 1 hour, he said. And the case that had been building for 4 years, the cooperation framework that had been assembled piece by piece over 8 weeks, the mountain of documentation and testimony and financial records that Adrian Moretti had been quietly compiling in the space between hospital visits and bedtime routines and conversations in Sophia's kitchen, all of it came to a point. In an FBI conference room on a Wednesday morning in January, Adrian Moretti sat across from Daniel Voss and placed on the table a complete documented account of the Calabrese organization's operations leadership structure, financial infrastructure, and the name of every figure with decision-making authority, including the name of the man who had leaked his son's existence, including the man named Franklin, who had stopped Sophia on Weston Street that morning, including enough information to make the case not in 8 to 12 months, but in 3. Voss looked at the documents for a long time. Then he looked at Adrian. "This is more than we had," he said. "Yes," Adrian said. "This is more than I expected." "I know." Voss looked at the table again. "Why?" he said. Adrian looked at him. "Because a man stopped my son's mother on the street this morning and mentioned my son," he said. "And I am done waiting for the right moment." Voss studied him. "There is no going back from this," he said. "I know that," Adrian said. "I made peace with that the night I sat in a hospital room next to a crib and learned what it felt like to have something worth protecting." Voss was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "All right." He picked up his phone. He started making calls. And Adrian Moretti sat in a federal building downtown and let his world change completely. Because on a Wednesday morning in November 2 months ago, a nurse had called him and told him he had a son, and everything that came after that was just the truth of what that meant catching up with him. He was ready for it. He had been ready since the moment he heard Noah laugh in his sleep. The arrests happened on a Thursday. Sophia found out the way she found out most things. Now Adrian called her first. It was 6:40 in the morning. Noah was in his bouncer eating a piece of banana with the focused intensity of someone negotiating a major contract. Sophia's phone buzzed on the counter, and she picked it up and saw Adrian's name and answered before the second ring. "It's done," he said. "Just that. 2 words." She sat down on the kitchen floor next to Noah's bouncer because her legs decided they were finished standing. "All of them," she said. 14 arrests across 3 organizations. Voss moved simultaneously on all fronts this morning at 6. His voice was steady, but she could hear something underneath it. Not quite relief, not quite exhaustion. Something that was both of those things layered over something much older. "Franklin is in custody. The 2 men who were positioned outside your building last week, both in custody. The individual inside my organization who leaked Noah's name." A pause. "Also in custody." "Who was it?" she said. A beat. "A man named Garrett. He worked in logistics. He'd been feeding information to Calabrese for 18 months. His voice was controlled in the particular way that meant something behind it was not controlled at all. He knew about Noah because he intercepted internal communications. He sold that information to Calabrese for what Voss tells me was a relatively modest sum." Sophia looked at Noah, who had dropped the banana and was now looking at his own hand with philosophical curiosity. "Relatively modest," she said. "Yes. Someone put our son's name in the hands of a criminal organization for a relatively modest sum." "Yes," Adrian said. "He did." She pressed her hand flat against the kitchen floor. The cold of the tile grounded her. "Are we safe?" she said. "Voss says yes. The leadership of Calabrese is in custody. The remaining figures don't have the authority or the motivation to continue any operation against us. The value of the threat evaporates when the people who ordered it are gone." He paused. "Carter and Sandra are going to stay on for another 2 weeks, while Voss confirms the picture is complete. After that, we're just people," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "After that, we're just people," he said. She looked at Noah. He had found the banana again. He held it up at her like he was presenting evidence. "Okay," she said softly. Not to Adrian, to Noah. Then she said into the phone, "Adrian." "Yes." "You should come over tonight." A pause. Longer than usual. "It's not my scheduled—" "I know it's not your scheduled night," she said. "Come anyway." Another pause. "I'll be there at 6, he said. He arrived at 5:58, which was the closest to the agreed time that Adrian Moretti had ever been to anything, because Adrian Moretti was constitutionally early and had spent his entire life managing that by arriving exactly when he said he would rather than when he wanted to. Sophia noticed. She always noticed things. She opened the door and he came in and went directly to Noah, who was on his playmat attempting to achieve something with a stacking ring that the stacking ring was not cooperating with. Adrian sat on the floor next to him. He picked up the bottom ring, the largest one red, and held it out. Noah looked at it, looked at him, took the ring, tried to put it on the post, got it, made the sound, the specific sound of uncomplicated satisfaction. "There you go," Adrian said. Sophia watched from the doorway for a moment before she moved into the kitchen. She made dinner. Real dinner, not the quick assembly line meals she'd been surviving on since Noah came home from the hospital. She made the pasta dish she used to make on Sunday evenings, the one with the white wine and the cream and the fresh herbs that took 40 minutes and required actual attention. Adrian came into the kitchen at some point and leaned against the counter and watched her. "You're cooking," he said. "I'm aware. You haven't cooked since before Noah was born," she said. "I know." She stirred without looking at him. "I used to cook when things felt stable. I stopped when they didn't." He was quiet. "Things feel stable," he said. She considered it. "Stable adjacent," she said. He made a sound, not quite a laugh, but the shape of one. "I'll take stable adjacent," he said. "Hand me the wine," she said. He found it on the counter and handed it to her. She poured a measure into the pan and felt the immediate sizzle and the smell that came with it, and something in her chest loosened slightly, the way things loosened when the body remembers something good before the mind catches up. They ate at her small kitchen table, with Noah in his high chair between them, performing his own version of dinner, which involved pasta, getting into locations that raised genuine structural questions. They talked about normal things. Noah's next cardiology appointment scheduled for the following Tuesday. The book she'd been trying to read for 3 weeks and still hadn't finished. A case at work, a custody dispute that was breaking her heart, a father who couldn't see that the way he was fighting was the thing damaging his children more than the divorce itself. "What do you tell them?" Adrian said. "The clients in that situation." She looked at him. "I tell them that winning the argument is not the same as winning what matters," she said. "I tell them that their children are watching every decision they make right now and forming beliefs about what love looks like, and whatever they show them, that's what their kids will carry." He was quiet. Noah threw a piece of pasta. It landed on Adrian's sleeve. He looked at it, then at Noah. Noah looked extremely pleased with himself. "You did that on purpose," Adrian said. Noah grabbed another piece. "Don't," Adrian said. Noah paused, considered, put it in his mouth instead. "Good decision," Adrian said. Sophia watched this and felt the loosening in her chest spread into something warmer and more frightening. She looked at her plate. After dinner, after Noah's bath, a process Adrian had now been part of enough times to have strong opinions about the correct water temperature and the specific order of operations. And after Noah was in his crib with the orange fish and the jazz record Sophia had put on low in the other room, they sat on opposite ends of her couch with tea. The apartment was quiet in the particular way it got after Noah went down. Sophia had learned to love that quiet. It used to feel like absence. Now it felt like rest. "I want to ask you something," Adrian said. She looked at him. "And I want you to know before I ask it that your answer is your answer," he said. "I'm not asking it to start a negotiation. I'm not asking it to apply pressure. I'm asking because I think I've earned the right to ask, and because I want to know what you actually think." She waited. "Do you believe I've changed?" he said. She held his gaze. "Yes," she said. Without hesitation. He seemed to have expected a longer pause. He recalibrated. "How much?" he said. "Enough that I'm sitting here having this conversation instead of having it through lawyers," she said. "Enough that when you made a decision without telling me 6 weeks ago, you came that same night and told me the truth about why instead of defending it." She paused. "Enough that you went to 3 stores for an orange fish." His expression shifted slightly. "That's not. I know it's not a massive gesture," she said. "That's the point. It's the small ones. Anyone can make a grand gesture. The small ones are the ones that tell you who someone actually is when they're not performing." He looked at her steadily. "And who am I?" he said. She thought about it honestly. "A man who is working very hard to become someone his son won't have to be afraid of," she said. "And I think you're succeeding. But I also think that's a continuous process and not a destination, and I need you to understand that I know the difference." He nodded. "What else?" he said. "What do you mean, what else?" "You said enough that you're sitting here having this conversation. That's a floor, not a ceiling. What else are you thinking?" She looked at him. "You want me to tell you where we are?" she said. "I want to know what you actually think, not the careful version, the real one." She set down her tea. "The real version," she said slowly, "is that I am not the same person I was when I left either. I left because I was afraid, and I was disappearing, and I didn't know how to say that without it sounding like an accusation. I spent 16 months building a life that was entirely mine, and that was necessary, and I don't regret it." She looked at her hands. "But I also spent 16 months alone. And there were moments, a lot of them, when I wanted to call you. Not to reconcile, not to open any of this back up. Just because—" She stopped. "Because," he said. "Because you were the person I talked to," she said quietly. "For 2 years, you were the person I told things to. And when that stopped, there were gaps. Things happened, and I had no one to tell them to. She looked up. That sounds smaller than it is. It doesn't sound small at all, he said. She looked at him. I'm not saying I want to go back, she said carefully. I don't want to go back to what we were. I don't think either of us should. No, he said. But I am saying that I don't know what forward looks like yet, and I'm asking you to be patient with that. He held her gaze for a long moment. I have been patient, he said. I can continue to be patient. You're not naturally patient, she said. No, he said. I'm not, which is how you know I mean it. She looked at him. Then she said something she hadn't planned to say. Tell me about the night your father died, she said. He went very still. In 2 years of marriage, she had never asked him that directly. She had known it was there, the shape of it visible in 100 things he did and didn't say. The way he held certain silences, the way he spoke about control and safety and protection. But she had never asked. Why now? He said. Because I think it's the center of everything, she said. And I think if I understand it, I understand you better. And I think... She paused. I think if you tell me, it'll be the most honest you've ever been with me. He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, I was 19. I was at the house in Lincoln Park, the one my mother still lives in. My father came home late the way he always did. I heard the car. I heard the door. He stopped. Then I heard my mother scream. Sophia was very still. He was in the hallway, Adrian said. He had made it from the door to the hallway. That was as far as he got. His voice was even. He was 51 years old. He had never had a sick day in his life. He had never had a symptom. There was no warning. He paused. He was there, and then he wasn't. She said nothing. I was the one who called the ambulance, he said. My mother couldn't function. I was the one who called. I was the one who told them what happened. I was the one who spoke to the paramedics when they arrived. He looked at his hands. My father was the most powerful man I knew. He controlled everything in his world. He had spent his whole life building something that was supposed to be invulnerable. He paused. And he died in a hallway because something inside him that he never knew about just stopped. Sophia reached across the couch. She put her hand over his. He looked at it. After that, he said, I decided that I was never going to let something catch me by surprise. I was going to know every variable. I was going to control every outcome. I was going to build something so complete that nothing could reach the people inside it. He looked up at her. I did not understand until recently that what I built was exactly as fragile as what my father had. I just couldn't see it from the inside. She kept her hand over his. Noah has the same thing, she said softly. The same cardiac vulnerability. A different version of what your father had. Yes. And you found out about it in a hospital with no warning. Yes. Like your father. He was quiet for a moment. Not like my father, he said. Because we caught it. Because Dr. Ewan knows exactly what it is and exactly how to manage it. Because my son is going to grow up knowing what is in his body and how to take care of it. He turned his hand over under hers. That's the difference. That's what knowing changes. She held his hand. She let herself hold it. I'm sorry, she said. About your father. About what 19-year-old Adrian had to carry. I'm sorry I never asked before. He looked at her. You're asking now, he said. Yes. That's enough, he said. That's more than enough. They sat like that for a while. The jazz record had ended in the other room, and Noah was quiet, and the apartment held its good nighttime silence around them. She was the one who let go first, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to think, and she couldn't think clearly when she was touching him. She picked up her tea. I think, she said carefully, that we should try something. He watched her. Not reconciliation, she said. I'm not ready for that word, but something intentional. Something that is not just two parents coordinating drop-offs. She looked at him. You and I outside of Noah, not as what we were, as something we haven't named yet. He was quiet for a moment. What does that look like? He said. I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I think it starts with you taking me to dinner. He looked at her. Not tonight, she said. Tonight I'm too tired to be charming. But this week. Thursday, he said. Thursday. She agreed. He stood up. He picked up his jacket from the chair. He was at the door when she said, Adrian. He turned. When you come Thursday, she said, come because you want to, not because it's strategic. He looked at her with an expression she was still learning to read, the new version of him, the one with less armor. Sophia, he said, I have never wanted anything strategically in my life. She held his gaze. I know, she said. I'm just making sure you do too. He left. She sat on the couch for another 20 minutes, listening to the quiet. Thursday dinner was at a small Italian restaurant in the West Loop that Adrian had not chosen because it was impressive, but because he remembered from a conversation 3 years ago that she had not expected him to retain that she had mentioned wanting to try it. She walked in and saw him already at the table early as always, and watched him stand when he saw her. The automatic good manners of a man who had been raised with them, and felt something move through her that she identified after a moment as simple, uncomplicated gladness. She sat down. He poured her water without asking. You remembered this place, she said. You mentioned it, he said, once, 3 years ago. I remember things, he said simply. She looked at the menu. They ordered. They talked. Not about Noah. They had agreed without quite saying it out loud that tonight was not about Noah. About the food, about the neighborhood, about a book he had apparently read twice in the past month that she had recommended to him in passing, and he had actually gone out and found. You read it, she said. I read both of them, he said. The one you mentioned and the one the author wrote before it because I wanted the context. She stared at him. You read 2 books in a month, she said. I read when I can't sleep, he said, which lately is frequently. Why can't you sleep? He looked at her across the table. Because I have things to think about, he said. She looked back at him. She had forgotten somehow in the years of hurt and the months of distance that she had found him interesting. Not just powerful, not just attractive. Interesting, the quality of his thinking, the way he sat with something before he spoke, the specific intelligence that showed up most clearly in small moments when he didn't know he was being watched. She had fallen in love with that first. She hadn't forgotten it exactly. She had just put it somewhere she wasn't going to look. The book you recommended, he said. The one about the woman who loses her husband and has to figure out who she is without him. I kept thinking while I was reading it that the author got one thing wrong. She raised an eyebrow. The character never asks for help, he said. She struggles alone for the entire book and she treats it like strength, but it read to me like a different kind of control, the refusal to need anyone. He paused. I identified with it more than I was comfortable with. Sophia looked at him. That's a very honest thing to say, she said. I'm practicing, he said, at honesty, at saying things out loud that I would usually just think. He met her gaze. You told me once that I made decisions and presented them, that the process was always invisible, and you only ever saw the outcome. He paused. I'm trying to make the process visible. I'm not very good at it yet. You're getting better, she said. How much better? More than you think, she said. Less than you're going to be. He considered this. I can live with that, he said. They stayed for 3 hours. The restaurant emptied around them, and they stayed. And at some point the owner, a small man named Carmine, who had been running the place for 22 years, and who had absolutely recognized Adrian Moretti when he walked in and had said nothing about it, which earned him a significant amount of respect from both of them, brought out a small plate of something that wasn't on the menu and set it down without ceremony. For the table, he said, and went back. Sophia looked at the plate, then at Adrian. You come here often, she said. First time, he said. Then why? Because I made a reservation for Moretti. He said simply. In this city that still means something. She thought about that. Does it bother you, he said, that it still means something? Ask me again in a year, she said. He nodded. I'll remember, he said. I know you will, she said. The morning of Noah's 10-month wellness appointment, it rained. Sophia had the car seat buckled and the diaper bag packed and was in the process of convincing Noah that his coat was not in fact a personal insult when Adrian knocked at 7:45. She had not invited him. She had mentioned the appointment 3 days ago in passing, and now here he was at 7:45 with coffee from the good place and a specific look on his face that said he had not been entirely sure he was going to be welcome and had decided to come anyway. She took the coffee. You're going to have to get his right arm in first, she said. He's decided his right arm is exempt from all coats. I know, Adrian said. We had this conflict last week. He crouched in front of Noah. I know your position on this, he said. I understand you find the coat constraining. However, he held it up. It is 31 degrees outside, and I am not negotiating with you about core temperature. Noah looked at the coat, looked at Adrian, put his right arm in. Sophia stared. How did you... The trick, Adrian said, helping with the left arm, is to not frame it as a request. He looked up at her with that almost smile. He responds to statements of fact better than he responds to questions. He gets that from you, she said. I know, Adrian said with a complete lack of defensiveness that still occasionally surprised her. Dr. Ewan was pleased. She said it in the direct, undramatic way she said everything which Sophia had come to appreciate enormously. His rhythm has been stable for 11 consecutive weeks. The medication is doing exactly what we want it to do. He is growing well 21 pounds, which is excellent, and his development looks completely on track. She looked at both of them. You are both doing everything right. Whatever you're doing at home, keep doing it. Neither Adrian nor Sophia looked at each other during that sentence, but Sophia felt it land somewhere complicated. Whatever you're doing at home, as if there was a home they were both doing it in. In the elevator on the way down, Noah fell asleep against Adrian's chest with the instantaneous completeness of a baby who had decided this was the moment for sleep, and sleep was happening now, regardless of logistics. Adrian stood very still. He looked at Sophia over the top of Noah's head. Dr. Ewan said 11 consecutive weeks, he said quietly. I heard. When he came in, he said, when they called me that first night, he stopped, looked at Noah. They told me it was serious. They told me it might... He stopped again. She watched him not finish the sentence. But he didn't, she said. No, he said. He didn't. The elevator opened. They walked through the lobby. Outside, the rain had eased to something lighter, and Adrian stood on the sidewalk, holding Noah asleep against his chest, and did not immediately move toward the car. What? She said. I was thinking, he said, about what it would have been like to not know him. He looked down at the sleeping baby. If the hospital hadn't called that night, if another nurse had been on duty, if any number of things had been slightly different. He looked up at Sophia. I didn't know what I didn't have until I had it, and now I cannot imagine the version of myself that didn't. She looked at him. He changed you, she said. You both did, he said. She held his gaze. The rain fell softly around them. Come to dinner Sunday, she said. Not as a visit, as a regular thing. Sunday dinner, the three of us. He was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? He said. I said it, didn't I? Sophia, he said carefully. I want to be honest with you about something. If Sunday dinner becomes a regular thing, if we start building regular things, I am not going to be able to be casual about it. I do not have a casual setting. I am going to mean it completely. And I need you to know that before you invite me. She looked at him for a long moment. I know you don't have a casual setting, she said. I've known you for 4 years. I'm inviting you anyway. He exhaled. Sunday, he said. Bring something, she said. Not something expensive, something useful. Like what? She started walking toward the car. Surprise me, she said. You're good at that now. He brought flour and eggs and a recipe that his mother had written on an index card in her handwriting, and he made pasta from scratch on her kitchen counter while Noah supervised from the high chair, and Sophia sat on the counter beside him and watched and drank wine and occasionally offered opinions he didn't ask for. More flour, she said. I know how to make pasta, Sophia. Your mother's handwriting says more flour. My mother's handwriting is a guide, not a law, says the man whose mother cried when he finally told her the truth. He looked at her sideways. She looked back completely unrepentant. More flour, she said. He added more flour. The pasta was excellent. After dinner, after Noah went down, they sat at her kitchen table with the remainder of the wine and the remains of dinner around them, and it felt domestic was the word. The word Sophia turned over in her mind and examined from multiple directions. Not the domesticity of what they'd had before. Not the managed, controlled version of a shared life where everything was decided and she moved within the decisions. Something different. Something that felt like two adults who had both arrived at the same table, carrying everything they'd learned about themselves in the past 16 months and set it down between them. Elena wants to meet him, Adrian said. I know. You told me. I'd like to bring him to see her next Sunday, he said. If you're comfortable with that, you'd come with us. It would be all of us. She thought about it. Your mother doesn't know me as anything but the woman who left her son, she said. My mother knows you as the woman who raised her grandson alone for 9 months and made sure he survived, he said. I made sure she understood that. Sophia looked at him. What exactly did you tell her? The truth, he said. The version you asked me to tell her. What I did wrong. Why you made the decisions you made. Why both of us made the mistakes we made. He paused. She listened for a long time. Then she said that the only thing she cared about was that her grandson was alive and that the two of us were talking to each other. That's all she cared about. She also said that you were right about the coat thing, he said. She told me I was exactly the same as a baby, and no one could get my right arm into anything for the first 18 months of my life. Sophia stared at him. Then she laughed. It came out sudden and real, the kind of laugh that arrived before you could edit it, and Adrian looked at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Something so open it was almost startling. You laughed, he said. I know I laughed, she said. It was funny. I haven't heard you laugh in... He stopped. She looked at him. A long time, he finished. She looked at the table. I stopped laughing a lot, she said. After I left. I didn't mean to. I think I was so focused on surviving that anything that felt light seemed like something I didn't have time for. And now, he said. She thought about it. Now my son makes me laugh 6 times a day, she said. And apparently, so does the information that you and he have matching coat problems. He smiled. Not the almost smile. An actual smile, full and real, the kind she had seen only occasionally in 2 years of marriage and had spent those years knowing she wanted to see more of. Next Sunday, she said, we'll take Noah to meet Elena. He looked at her with something that was not quite gratitude, something bigger than that, less manageable. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, she said. Wait until you see whether he cooperates with the coat. He won't, Adrian said. No, she said. He definitely won't. Done. The night before they were supposed to go to Elena's. Sophia woke at 2 a.m. Not because of Noah. Noah was sleeping. She could hear the monitor. She woke because something had moved through her sleep and brought her to the surface, and she lay in the dark and tried to identify what it was. She thought about what she had built in 16 months. The apartment small and entirely hers. The job that gave her work, she believed in. The life she had made from the pieces of the one she'd left, careful, deliberate, assembled, with the particular attention of someone who had learned that the things you built by yourself were the ones you could trust. She had built it because she needed to, and she did not want to unbuild it. She thought about Adrian sitting at her kitchen table, making his mother's pasta, asking before he did things now, instead of after showing up Saturday mornings, because he had checked Noah's medication schedule and didn't want to miss the window. She thought about a man who had gone to 3 stores for an orange fish. She lay in the dark and asked herself the question she had been circling for 2 months. Was she going to let this happen? Not blindly, not without eyes open, not the way she had the first time young and in love, and not yet knowing what she didn't know. This time, she knew. She knew exactly what he was capable of, the old version and the new version. She knew her own capacity for disappearing inside someone else's structure if she wasn't careful. She knew that love in her experience came with a cost she had once paid without realizing it, and could not afford to pay again. But she also knew this, that the man sitting at her kitchen table, talking to his mother's index card, was not the same man she had left. And she was not the same woman who had left him. And their son was 10 months old, and laughed in his sleep, and refused to put his right arm in a coat. And he was going to grow up watching what love looked like, and she wanted to show him something true. She got up. She went to the kitchen. She made tea. She stood at the window and looked at Chicago in the dark, the particular quiet of 2 in the morning, when the city was between its nighttime and its morning, neither one thing nor the other. Her phone was on the counter. She picked it up. She typed, "Are you awake?" 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Yes." She typed, "Why?" A pause. "I have things to think about." She looked at that for a moment. Then she typed, "Me too." Another pause. Then, good things or bad things. She thought about it honestly. Both she typed, mostly good. She could almost feel him on the other end of that, the particular quality of his attention, the way he absorbed information and held it. Then, "Go back to sleep, Sophia. Tomorrow is a big day." She smiled. "You sound like someone's father," she typed. The response came quickly. "I am someone's father." She stood at the window for another moment. Then she put her phone down and went back to bed. And she thought, in the space between awake and asleep, that the things you rebuilt were sometimes stronger than the things you built the first time. Because the second time you knew what you were doing. And you knew what it cost. And you chose it anyway. That was not blindness. That was something else entirely. Something that looked, if she let herself say the word, very much like courage. Elena Moretti opened the door before they reached the top step. She had been watching from the window. Sophia knew it the moment she saw the door swing open a half-second too fast, the way a door opens when the person on the other side has been standing close to it for some time, waiting. Elena was smaller than Sophia had imagined. In the years of their marriage, Adrian had described his mother in terms that created a certain impression, a woman of presence, of quiet authority, someone who had survived difficult decades with her dignity fully intact. All of that was visible. But she was also simply a woman in her 70s in a navy cardigan, and her eyes went directly to the bundle in Sophia's arms, and she did not bother to hide what happened to her face. She pressed one hand over her mouth, just for a moment. Then she lowered it and looked at Sophia and said with a steadiness that cost her something, "Thank you for coming." Sophia said, "Thank you for having us." They looked at each other for 1 second. 2 women across a complicated history, measuring something that couldn't quite be named, and then Elena looked at Adrian, and something passed between them that Sophia chose not to watch because it was private. She looked at Noah instead. He was looking at Elena with the inventory expression, the thorough one. "Hi, tesoro," Elena said softly in the mix of English and Italian that Sophia would learn over the next several hours was simply how Elena Moretti's voice worked. "Hi, baby." Noah studied her. Then he reached out one hand. Elena made a sound that Sophia would remember for a long time. Not quite a sob. Not quite a laugh. Something between them that had no name except grandmother. She took his hand. Adrian, standing just behind Sophia, exhaled. It was the quietest sound. But Sophia heard it. They stayed for 4 hours. Elena fed them. She had been cooking since the previous evening. Adrian noted with the expression of a man who recognized the extent of preparation and understood exactly what it meant, and she held Noah for long stretches without demanding anything from him, just letting him look around at his grandmother's house and form whatever opinions he was forming, giving him the space to arrive at his own conclusions. He fell asleep in her arms after lunch. Elena sat very still and did not move for 35 minutes because he was sleeping and she was not going to be the reason he woke up. Adrian sat across from her watching his mother hold his son, and his face was something Sophia had never seen it be before. Unguarded. Completely, entirely unguarded. She looked away because it felt intrusive to watch, and Elena said very softly so as not to wake Noah, "He looks like your father at this age." "I know," Adrian said. "I have a photograph," Elena said. "Somewhere in the boxes in the guest room. Your father at 9 months old. I'm going to find it." "I know you will," Adrian said. Elena looked at Sophia. "He told me," she said, not accusatory, not forgiving. Either forgiveness implied a verdict, and Elena Moretti had not issued one. Just factual, the way people state things when they have decided to move forward instead of backward. "Everything. He told me everything." "I know," Sophia said. "I want you to know that I am not that I understand." Elena looked down at Noah. "I spent 40 years inside a world I didn't choose, and I told myself it was because I loved a man who was part of it, and that was true. But it was also true that I didn't know how to leave, or I was afraid to find out if I could." She paused. "You knew how, and you did. I don't hold that against you." Sophia looked at this woman who had raised Adrian Moretti and felt something complex and unexpected move through her. "He's different," Sophia said. "I want you to know that I see that." Elena looked at her son. "He came here 6 weeks ago," she said, "and he sat at that table for 3 hours and told me things I always suspected and never heard out loud. And then he asked me, he said, 'Mama, was I wrong?' And I said yes." She paused. "He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He said, 'I know.' And then he asked me what he could do differently." She looked at Sophia. "In 40 years, I never heard his father ask that question. Not once." The apartment was quiet. Noah breathed against Elena's chest. Adrian looked at his hands. "He's learning," Sophia said. Elena said, "You're teaching him." Sophia opened her mouth. "Don't tell me you're not," Elena said mildly but firmly. "I have eyes." Sophia closed her mouth. Adrian said nothing, but the corner of his face moved in the way that meant something he wasn't going to say. On the drive home, Noah asleep in the car seat, Adrian driving, and Sophia in the passenger seat, she said, "Your mother is remarkable." "Yes," he said. "She's been holding things for a very long time." "Yes." "She should be angry." "She is," he said. "She's just very good at where she puts it." Sophia looked out the window. "She loved him," she said. "Your father. Even knowing what she knew about the world he came from. She loved who he was inside it," Adrian said. "She used to say that a man's world and a man's heart were two different things. That you had to decide which one you were choosing." He paused. "I think she spent 40 years hoping they would align, and they never quite did." Sophia was quiet. "Do you think they can," she said, "align?" He glanced at her. "I think the world changes when the man does," he said. "Not the other way around." She looked at him. "That is the most self-aware thing you've ever said in a moving vehicle," she said. He almost smiled. "I'm practicing," he said. "I know," she said. "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." She turned back to the window. Chicago moved past them Sunday afternoon, quieter than the rest of the week, the city at a lower register. She watched it and let herself feel what she'd been building toward for weeks, the thing that had been accumulating in small moments, orange fish and flour, and index cards, and 2 in the morning text messages. She let herself feel it without immediately examining it for danger. That was new. That was she realized what the last 4 months had actually been building, not toward Adrian specifically, toward herself, toward a version of herself who could feel something without immediately checking its structural integrity. "I'd like you to meet someone," she said. He glanced at her. "David Hartley," she said. "My boss. He wants to speak to you about something." "About what?" "He told me to let him tell you himself," she said. "But I'll say this much, it's professional, and I think you should hear it." He was quiet for a moment. "You vouched for me," he said. "I did." "To your boss?" "Yes." "Why?" She looked at him. "Because I trust your integrity when it matters," she said. "And what David is working on matters. I'll let him explain the rest." He drove for a moment without speaking. "Sophia," he said. "Don't make it a big thing," she said. "It's a meeting." "It's not nothing." "No," she said. "It's not nothing. But let's not—" She paused. "Let's let things be what they are while they're being them, without naming them prematurely." He considered this. "All right," he said. "Good," she said. In the back seat, Noah made the sound. The one from very far away. The sleep laugh. Both of them heard it. Neither of them said anything. But the car was very warm. David Hartley met Adrian Moretti on a Wednesday morning in a conference room at Hartley & Associates that smelled like old law books and coffee and 30 years of difficult conversations. Sophia did not sit in. She had offered to, and Adrian had said he didn't need her there, and she had said she knew he didn't need her there, and offered anyway, and he had said with the particular look that meant he understood the distinction she was making, that he would like to handle this one on his own. She sat at her desk and worked and tried not to watch the clock. They were in there for 2 hours and 20 minutes. When Adrian came out, David Hartley walked him to the door and shook his hand for slightly longer than a standard handshake, the handshake of two men who have reached an agreement about something that matters. Adrian walked past Sophia's desk. He stopped. "Dinner tonight," he said. She looked up. "You could tell me what happened in there," she said. "Dinner?" he said. "I'll tell you at dinner." She looked at him. 7, she said. 7? He agreed. He left. Her assistant, a 24-year-old named Priya, who was extremely good at her job and had been watching Adrian Moretti walk through the office with the specific attention of someone filing information for later, looked at Sophia. Sophia looked back at her. "Not a word," Sophia said. "I wasn't going to say anything," Priya said. "You were thinking several things. Several very professional things," Priya said, and turned back to her computer. Over dinner, Adrian explained what David Hartley had proposed. It had started, he told her, from a case David was working on, a family affected by organized crime in a way that had left them with nothing, navigating a legal system that was technically designed to help them, but practically impossible to access without money or connections. David had been working pro bono the way he took certain cases, and he had been thinking about the structural problem, not just this family, but the pattern of families like them. He had done research. He had read about the federal cooperation framework Adrian had entered. He had formed an opinion. He wants to create something, Adrian said. A foundation. Legal services and financial support for families affected by organized crime and gang violence. People who fall between the cracks too much to qualify for certain assistance, not enough to access the legal resources they actually need. He looked at Sophia. "He wants me as a founding board member. He wants my name, my network, and my money, and he wants to house it through his firm." Sophia looked at him. "He wants the most feared man in Chicago on the board of a foundation that helps people hurt by men like the most feared man in Chicago," she said. "Yes," Adrian said. He was very direct about the irony. "What did you say?" "I said I'd need 24 hours to think about it." He held her gaze. "But I already know my answer." "You're going to say yes." "I'm going to say yes," he confirmed. She looked at the table. She thought about David Hartley, who had taken this case and that case for 30 years, because he believed in something, who had looked at Adrian Moretti's history and seen not a closed door, but a resource, who had trusted her enough to ask her to make the introduction. She thought about what that foundation would actually do, the families it would reach, the gap it would fill. "It's going to be complicated," she said. "People are going to question your motivation." "I know. Some of them are going to be right to," she said. "Not everyone who comes to that table is going to believe it's genuine. I know that too." "How do you make them believe it?" "I don't," he said simply. "I can't make anyone believe anything. I show up. I do the work. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the work either speaks or it doesn't." He looked at her steadily. "I'm not doing it for the reputation. I'm doing it because it's the right thing, and because David Hartley asked me, and because you trust him, and that matters to me more than I know how to explain." She looked at him. "I'd like to be involved too," she said. He was still. "In what capacity?" "Legal counsel," she said. "I'll talk to David. It would require some restructuring of my role, but if we're building something that provides legal services, I want to be part of building it." She paused. "That's what I left corporate law for. To do work that meant something. This means something." He looked at her for a long moment. "You would be doing this for the work," he said carefully. "Not because—" "I'm doing it for the work," she said firmly. "Separately from whatever else is happening." He nodded once, but his eyes said something his voice wasn't saying, and she saw it, and filed it, and chose not to address it yet. "Tell David yes," she said. "Tomorrow morning." "I will," he said. She picked up her wine. "We're building something," she said. It came out quiet, almost to herself. He heard it. "Yes," he said. "We are." The foundation launched 6 months later. They called it the Bennett Moretti Family Initiative, which had been David's suggestion, and which both Adrian and Sophia had resisted for different reasons before accepting. Because David pointed out, with the patience of a man who had been practicing law for 30 years, that the name was the transparency. It told everyone exactly who was behind it, and dared them to make of that what they would. The launch event was modest by the standards of the world. Adrian came from a room full of people who actually needed to be there, not people who needed to be seen to be there. Families David had worked with, community advocates, a handful of journalists who covered the kind of stories that didn't always get covered. Sophia spoke. She had written and rewritten the remarks 4 times, and in the end, she had thrown away everything she wrote and said what she actually meant, which was that she had spent her career trying to help people who had run out of good options, and that this was a chance to build something before those options ran out. She did not mention Adrian by name. She talked about partnership, about what happened when resources met purpose, about her son briefly, about what it had meant to fight for his life and have the system work the way it was supposed to, and about all the families for whom it didn't. She talked for 8 minutes. When she sat down, Adrian beside her said nothing. He put his hand over hers on the table for approximately 3 seconds. Then he took it back. She did not look at him, but she turned her hand over under his for those 3 seconds, just slightly, the way you do when you want someone to know you felt them. He spoke next. He spoke for 6 minutes. He was direct, and he was clear, and he said nothing that was not true, and he said one thing that the room did not expect. "I built something for 20 years that I told myself was protection," he said. "I told myself that control was the same as care. I was wrong about that, and the cost of being wrong fell on people who had not agreed to pay it." He paused. "I can't undo the cost, but I can change what I build next, and I can make it mean something to the people it's supposed to serve." He looked at David Hartley. "That's what this is. That's all it is. We're going to do the work, and the work is going to speak." The room was quiet. Then it wasn't. Later, after the event in the hallway outside the main room, while the reception went on without them, Sophia said, "That was well done." "Was it?" he said. "You didn't perform it," she said. "That's what made it work. You said exactly what you meant." He looked at her. "I've been practicing that," he said. "I know," she said. "It shows." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sophia." She knew from his voice that this was a different kind of sentence, the kind that preceded something that had been building for a long time. "Not tonight," she said. He looked at her. "Not because the answer is no," she said, "because tonight is about this, and whatever you're about to say deserves its own night, its own moment." She looked at him steadily. "Give it a week." He held her gaze. "A week," he said. 7 days, she said. "Then say what you want to say." He nodded. They went back into the reception. Yeah. The week passed the way weeks passed, now full of the particular texture of a life that had found its rhythm. Noah had started pulling himself up on furniture. He would grab the edge of the coffee table or the couch, or once Adrian's leg and haul himself upright, and then stand there with the expression of someone who had conquered a significant thing and expected acknowledgement. He always got acknowledgement. On Thursday he let go, just for a second. He stood without holding anything, and then sat down hard and looked up at both of them, Adrian on one side of the living room, Sophia on the other, both of them having gone completely still, with an expression of profound self-congratulation. "He stood," Adrian said. "I saw," Sophia said. "He stood on his own." "Adrian, I was here. I saw." "I know," she said. "Come here. Come here." She was already on the floor, and Noah was already reaching for her, and Adrian came off the couch and got on the floor too, and the three of them were in a pile that was not exactly a plan. Just what happened when two people who both wanted to be closest to something extraordinary ended up in the same place at the same time. Noah grabbed Adrian's finger and Sophia's hair simultaneously. He was extremely pleased with himself. "You're going to walk soon," Sophia told him. Noah looked at her as if to say, "Obviously." "And then we're finished," she said. "Absolutely finished." "We're already finished," Adrian said. "We were finished the moment he figured out the stacking rings." "We were finished the moment he learned to throw pasta," she said. "We were finished from the beginning," Adrian said. She looked at him. He was looking at Noah, not at her. But the words sat in the air, and she heard everything in them. They were finished from the beginning. There had never been a version of any of this where they weren't going to end up here in some form on a living room floor. This child between them, the city outside the foundation with David, and all the work ahead. From the moment a nurse called at midnight and said, "Mr. Moretti, you need to come to the hospital," the story had been moving in one direction. It had just taken them both a long time to stop moving against it. 7 days after the launch event on a Saturday morning, Adrian arrived at 9 with coffee and no particular agenda, which was itself something. Adrian Moretti without an agenda was a relatively recent development, and Sophia still found it slightly miraculous. Noah was having breakfast. Adrian sat across from him and negotiated the last few bites of oatmeal in the specific way he had developed, which involved a commentary on each spoonful that Noah found entertaining enough to open his mouth for. When breakfast was done and Noah was on the floor with his toys, Adrian looked at Sophia. She looked back at him. "Okay," she said. He laced his hands together on the table. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since approximately 4 months after we met, when you told me I was wrong about something in a meeting full of people who never told me I was wrong about anything, and you were not afraid, and I thought that is the most interesting person I have ever been in a room with." He paused. "I was not good at loving you the first time. I loved you the way I knew how, which was by building a structure around you and calling it love, and it was not enough, and it was not right, and I understand that." He held her gaze. "I am not the same person I was then. You know that because you have been watching me for 4 months, and you watch everything." Another pause. "I am not asking you to forget what the first version cost you. I am asking you to let me try the second version. Not the same structure. Something different. Something we build together with you telling me when I get it wrong and me actually listening." He stopped. "That's all. That's everything I have to say." Sophia looked at him. She had known this was coming. She had given it a week because she needed the week not to decide she realized now, but to let herself arrive at the decision she had already made without second-guessing it the whole way there. "I have conditions," she said. He nodded. "When you make a decision that affects me or Noah, you tell me first. Not after. First. Always." "Yes," he said. "When I tell you you're doing the control thing, you hear it. You don't defend it. You hear it." "Yes. My career stays mine. The foundation is a partnership. My job at David's firm is mine. Those things don't become yours." "Agreed." "And," she paused, "and you teach Noah to cook, your mother's recipes, all of them. Because he deserves to know where he comes from, and that is part of where he comes from, and I want him to have it." Something moved across Adrian's face. "All of them," he said. "Everyone she'll share." He was quiet for a moment. "She'll share all of them," he said. "She's been waiting her whole life for someone to want them." Sophia nodded. "Then yes," she said. He looked at her. "Yes," she said again clearly, so there was no ambiguity about it. Not to going back. Yes to going forward. Yes to the second version. Yes to whatever this is while it's being what it is. She held his gaze. "And yes, because I love you too, and I have for a long time, even when I was too angry and too afraid to admit it." He didn't move across the table. He didn't make it a cinematic moment. He just looked at her with that completely unguarded face, the one she'd seen at Elena's, the one she was beginning to understand was who he actually was when the structure came down. "Okay," he said. "That's all you've got," she said. "I've been preparing that speech for 4 months," he said. "You used up the rest of what I had." She laughed. The real one. The unedited one that arrived before she could stop it. On the floor, Noah looked up from the stacking rings. He looked at his mother laughing. He looked at his father, looking at his mother. He made a sound, not the sleep laugh, something more immediate, more present. A sound of a person who was watching something good happen and wanted to add himself to it. He pulled himself up on the coffee table. Stood there. Let go. 4 steps. 4 actual steps across the living room rug, slightly sideways, deeply committed before he sat down and looked at both of them with an expression of complete and total authority. Sophia pressed her hands over her mouth. Adrian was already on his feet, but he stopped himself from moving because Noah hadn't asked for help and didn't need it. And sometimes the most important thing you could do for someone you loved was stand back and let them do the extraordinary thing on their own. That was new too. A year ago, he would have moved immediately instinctively to catch and hold and secure. Now he stood and watched his son walk and did not move until Noah reached his arms up, and then he picked him up and held him in the way that had become second nature, high on his shoulder, facing out, so Noah could see everything. 4 steps, Adrian said. 4 steps, Sophia confirmed. Dr. Yuen is going to be very pleased. Dr. Yuen is going to be thrilled, Sophia said. She's been waiting for this. My mother is going to cry, he said. Your mother cries about everything Noah does, Sophia said. Last week she cried because he made a face she said looked like your father. He did look like my father. I know. I'm just saying she's going to need a moment. Adrian looked at Noah, who was surveying the room from his elevated position with the expression of a person who had decided the world was correctly arranged. 4 steps. Adrian said again quietly, more to himself than to her. She knew what he was thinking. She had been thinking it too since the moment Noah's feet left the rug. She was thinking about the night in the hospital when this child had monitors on his chest and a cardiac team in the hallway and the word serious hanging in the air. She was thinking about long QT2 and Dr. Yuen and beta blockers and 11 consecutive weeks of stable rhythms and how far 11 weeks became 11 months. She was thinking about how far the distance was between the night a nurse called at midnight and this Saturday morning with coffee getting cold on the kitchen table and their son walking for the first time. He's fine, she said softly. I know, Adrian said. He's going to keep being fine. I know. But it's okay to feel it, she said. What you're feeling right now, you don't have to manage it. He looked at her over Noah's head. "I'm working on that," he said. "I know you are," she said. "It shows." 6 months after that Saturday morning, the Bennett-Moretti Family Initiative had served 43 families across Chicago, connected 21 people with legal representation. They would not otherwise have been able to access and distributed emergency financial assistance from a fund that was growing faster than any of them had predicted. David Hartley said at their quarterly board meeting that it was the most effective thing he'd built in 30 years of practice. He said it in his direct, understated way, which meant it was true. Sophia had restructured her role at the firm. She ran the legal services division of the initiative and maintained a reduced private client caseload families in transition people at critical junctures, the work she had come to David to do in the first place. She was not standing behind anyone. She was not moving within anyone else's decisions. She was standing in something she had built herself alongside people she had chosen. That felt like the truest thing. Adrian had restructured the Moretti business operations into a state that the federal liaison described at the close of the cooperation framework as complete and verified compliance, which was the government's way of saying that the most feared man in Chicago had done exactly what he said he would do, and the case was closed. His remaining businesses, the restaurants, the transportation companies, the real estate ran cleanly. He had a compliance officer, an outside review board, and the particular reputation of a man who had made a very visible turn and then proved it was real. People still called him powerful. They also called him something else now, something that had taken a while to attach itself but was beginning to stick trustworthy. Not universally, not without nuance, but enough. Elena Moretti came to Sunday dinner twice a month. She had given Sophia every recipe. Not photocopies, the actual index cards in Elena's handwriting preserved in a wooden box that had sat in Elena's kitchen for 40 years. She had handed it over on a Sunday in April and said, "These belong with whoever is making the family," and had not let Sophia argue about it. Noah was walking by then, everywhere, with a conviction and a speed that suggested he had been storing up ambition during the months when he was limited to crawling and was now deploying it all at once. He had words, too. Not many, but meaningful ones. His first clear word had been more deployed during breakfast with a precision that suggested he understood negotiation. His second had been a version of Adrian's name. Not Adrian, something rounder, something that came out of the particular mechanics of a 14-month-old's mouth that made Adrian set down his coffee cup and look at Noah with an expression Sophia had never seen on his face before, and couldn't quite name, except to say that it was the face of someone who had been given something they hadn't known they were waiting for. His third word was Mama, and it came at 2 in the morning in the dark when Noah woke and wanted her, and called for her by name for the first time. And Sophia sat up in bed and heard it, and felt it reach all the way down to the center of her. She went to him. She picked him up. She held him in the dark, and he put his face against her shoulder and went back to sleep almost immediately, because all he had needed was the knowledge that she was there. She stood in the dark and held her son, and thought this is what it was always going to come back to. Not the hospital room, or the FBI conference, or the men named Franklin and Garrett and Voss. Not the legal agreements, or the foundation, or the restructured businesses, or even the second version of a love she had been afraid to try again. It came back to this. A baby sleeping against her shoulder in the middle of the night, calling her by name because he knew she would come. That was the thing that mattered. That had always been the thing that mattered. On a Sunday in October, Noah, 16 months old, the foundation, 8 months running Chicago, doing what Chicago did in October, which was turn golden and sharp and briefly perfect. Before the cold, they took Noah to Lincoln Park. Not a plan. Not an agenda. Just a Sunday afternoon and a toddler who had opinions about being outside, and a sky that made it impossible to stay in. Noah walked the path between them, holding one hand from each of them, and periodically dropping both hands to run in a direction that seemed random, but probably had logic only he could follow. He found a leaf. He stopped and regarded it. He picked it up. He turned and walked back to Adrian and presented it with great ceremony. Adrian crouched down to his level and accepted the leaf with the seriousness it had been offered with. "Thank you," he said. Noah looked satisfied. He turned and ran toward the next thing. Sophia watched him go. "He gives you all the things he finds," she said. Adrian stood. "I know," he said. "He gave me a rock last week, and what I believe was a very old piece of pretzel." "You kept the rock," she said. "Of course I kept the rock." She looked at him. "It's on my desk," he said without embarrassment. Without a trace of the man who had once kept his office like a command center and his desk like a declaration of authority. Next to the photograph my mother gave me of my father. She reached out and took his hand. Not a statement, not a decision. Just what her hand wanted to do, and what she had decided to let her hands want things again. He laced his fingers through hers. Noah ran back with something else, she couldn't see what, but he was holding it up and making the sound of someone delivering important news. They walked toward him together. And Adrian Moretti, who had spent the first 40 years of his life believing that power meant control, and the last 16 months learning that it meant something else entirely, looked at his son running toward him in the October light and understood completely and permanently what it was actually for. Not for containing things, not for preventing loss, not for surrounding the people he loved with walls so high that nothing could touch them. It was for this, for being the person you ran to, for being the hand that was there when your son needed somewhere to put a leaf, for being the man who showed up not because he had arranged it, not because he had controlled the outcome, but because the people he loved knew he was coming and trusted that he would. That was the secret the hospital call had carried 16 months ago when a nurse said, "Mr. Moretti, you need to come." Not that he had a son. That was part of it, but not all of it. The real secret was what the son required. Not money, not protection, not the architecture of a life so perfectly controlled that nothing could go wrong. Just a father who showed up and stayed and kept showing up and learned how to hold an orange fish like it was something precious, because to his son it was. Just a man willing to become someone worth running toward. Sophia's hand in his was warm. Noah reached them and thrust the new thing. It was a stick. A very good stick, apparently at both of them at once, looking between them with the expression of someone presenting a solution. "It's a very good stick," Sophia told him. Noah looked at Adrian. "Excellent stick," Adrian confirmed. Noah looked at them both for one more moment, weighing this response, and then turned and ran off again, stick in hand, ready for whatever the next thing was going to be. They watched him go. "He's going to be okay," Adrian said. "He already is," Sophia said. She felt him look at her. She looked back. And in that moment, in the October light with their son running ahead of them and the city around them and the whole second version of everything still being built, she knew what she knew, that the greatest danger had never been loving someone powerful. The greatest danger was letting fear make every decision until there was nothing left to be afraid of losing. She had been afraid. She had run. And then she had come back, not to what she left, but to what had grown in the space where honesty finally replaced control and trust finally replaced performance. And two people who had both made serious mistakes finally decided that the mistakes did not have to be the last word. The last word was this Sunday, this path, this child with his excellent stick running into the October afternoon. The last word was the family they had not inherited and not constructed and not controlled into being, but chosen fully clearly, with their eyes open and their histories known, and their flaws on the table, chosen every single day. And that choice made freely, with full knowledge of what it cost, was the only kind that could ever last.